Hello, everybody, and welcome back to RHAP's coverage of Australian Survivor Redemption. My name is Mike Bloom, and it feels like a short time ago that Australian Survivor Redemption has ended its season, but postseason has just gotten started. It's found a second life, much like a few people stranded on Redemption Beach. And so here I am bringing you interviews with some of these standout contestants from this season to go a little deeper into the magnificent games that they played that unfolded in front of our very eyes. And given how chaotic this season was, there is a lot to get into. And I cannot think of a better person to start off this entire experiment with this season because she is officially the winner of the Chizzy for Australian Survivor Redemption, which some people might say can even beat out winning the season proper. It is the one, the only Keeley Jenkinson. Hi, Keeley.
Hi, Mike. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I got the chance to talk. I guess the first question I have is, how are you? Because, listen, I know you had just filmed, obviously, the reunion a couple weeks ago, but the entire experience of getting to watch yourself back, I'm sure it was something else, to say the least. So now that you have, like, gotten relatively settled down back into, spotting criminals instead of being one on the beach, how are you doing right now?
I'm doing okay. I miss my old life of crime on the beach of Samoa.
Yeah, have you had any sort of like consequences at work where people are like, "You're a little too good at this"?
Luckily not. I am actually a contractor, so I go in and out of lots of different organizations. I did have one client say, we're like obsessed with you. We're watching you in the kitchen on our lunch break. And I was kind of like, okay, that's great. If you want to spend your time with me talking about Survivor, we can absolutely do that.
Well,
I'm a retainer.
coming as part of that contract. I decided because I want to hear you talk Survivor, Keeley, because listen, I'm calling you definitely one of the standout newbies of the season, if not the standout newbie. Of course. Well, I want to start, though, with what got you to sign your own contract to get into Survivor, because I was a little surprised that at the reunion, when Faith is asked about your relationship, she had said that you actually had not watched a lot of Survivor. So talk to me about your history with the show prior to actually getting into the experience.
Sure. I don't have a deep history with the show. I've certainly watched it. I've seen a couple of episodes here and there, but I wouldn't recognize players. I wouldn't know the names of players either. My brother is a fan of Survivor, and he was watching last season. I had just repatriated back to Australia as well. And so I was around, and he just kind of said to me, "You're such a loser. You could never do something this cool and this amazing." And that night, it was the final night of casting tapes to get it in, and I sat right here where I am now in the dark at like 11 p.m, filmed this little video, and before I knew it, my phone was ringing, and I just kept saying yes, which is, one of my toxic traits. I just say yes, and I ended up on the beach in Samoa, which was super exciting. It was a great experience in the end.
So once that late night decision came to fruition, what sort of prep did you do, considering that, again, Survivor was a very new idea to you? Did you watch past seasons? Did you do fire making, balancing? What was sort of part of your prep process?
I tried to watch the first episode of each season. I didn't have a lot of time. I was a little time poor. I was working. I'd recently moved back to Australia as well. So, I was still trying to find my feet, but I tried to watch the first episode of each season. I didn't get far. My brother was like, we'll start with the worst season, Blood vs. Water, and we'll move from there. So I watched the first episode of that. And to be honest, I don't know how many other first episodes I watched.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess interesting to say, hey, you're going to go on to Survivor and you're pressed for time. Let's start with the worst and then really work away. Though, interestingly, that episode did open with a returnee getting voted out among newbies. So you had that brief amount of experience that you'd have to deal with in your own stead.
That's it. And he also gave me a rundown on a couple of iconic players. He didn't tell me the names, but he just gave me some of their stories. So he explained to me that there was a man who pretended to have a son the whole time. He didn't have a son. He played really well. And I'm pretty sure that's Harry. So he gave me a few little tidbits. And my other brother was talking about, if we end up on Samoa, should we pretend that our grandma just died because somebody else had played that before? And I was like, absolutely. Yes. Granny has just died.
So so just to clarify, if you had gone to the final 3 and there was this big endurance challenge, they would have come out and said your grandma had died.
Yeah.
Okay, listen, certainly, the person who ended up doing that in the US went out in 3rd place, so it would have been hopefully a better fortune for you.
That would have been great for me.
All right, well,
yeah.
let's talk about what got you out onto that beach. So, when you step foot in the sand, again, probably not a lot to expect given the fact that this was so new to you. But as you're sort of vibing things out, who were you connecting with early on? Who were you making those good first impressions with?
On the mat initially, no
Or,
one.
even that first day on the beach after the bounty Baron thing, because also the Baron thing, a little bit of a shocking start for your group.
I suppose so, yeah. I mean, we obviously arrived with nothing, but I think it was perhaps the best way to start Survivor as well, to have nothing and have to build a shelter and get the full experience. But in the beginning, I definitely connected with Faith, Mark, and Brooke, but the first person that I said, I like you, let's work together, was actually Sally. She was the first person I went to. I still even remember Caleb kind of running up to me and introducing himself. He was crazy. But those were the people I was connecting with quite quickly.
Well, it's interesting that you bring up Mark and Brooke because obviously your story is very much going to be tied to the returnees to the point where you are regarded as one. So talk to me a bit about this because, again, you did not necessarily have the Survivor history connection that especially someone like a Tez on your beach did. So do you feel like that gave you sort of like less of a sense of quote unquote worship or regarding these players in a different way? You're like, I don't know who you are from your previous work. I just know you as Mark, the diplomat who I'm working with.
Yeah, exactly. They were just normal people to me. I had no idea that Brooke was, this incredible challenge beast until, we get further on and I hear obviously whispers amongst the people in the tribe about both of their games, actually. But for me, they're regular people. They're absolutely lovely. I loved spending time with them. They've got great senses of humor. But I am also aware that I am not the most attuned to Survivor and how it all works. And so I am leaning on them for my education. So that's where it all started for me on Baron, was under the tutorship of Mark and Brooke.
Well, we saw how staunchly anti-returnee some people were on the bounty side of things. What was the vibe you were picking up on Baron? Did you feel like people were anti-returnee already talking to you about like Mark and Brooke have got to go, it's our season?
There was a little bit of that chatter, but it wasn't actually that forceful on our tribe. We were lucky not to go to tribal council for the first time as well. So we got a little bit more time to get to know one another. Obviously, that didn't last long. We ended up there at the second tribal council of the season, and Kat ultimately goes home. But there wasn't that great race to get rid of the returnees straight away.
Well, you talked about, connecting with Mark, Brooke, Faith. This is an alliance that comes together here, at least in this initial portion of the game. Did this feel natural for you? Was this Mark just basically being like, we're all working together now?
I trusted no one, Mike. When people would say to me, like, I want to work with you, I was like, okay, I don't really believe you. I was really suspicious of everybody in the beginning. Like the first couple of days was not great for me. I was still making connections and I was still saying things I think people wanted to hear and going where I could potentially go, but you don't know where everyone stands until tribal council. And it wasn't until our first tribal council when I thought, oh, okay, maybe they're telling the truth. So maybe we really are an alliance. This is fantastic. But before then, I was so suspicious of everybody.
Well, let's get to this tribal council because while you feel like it may have given you some lessons to take away from it, it provided a lot to chew on as well in the moment. I mean, this is one of the wildest first tribal councils I've seen for a tribe in a long time. They're not always like this. So I want to hear your perspective on it, especially considering that this was your first tribal council ever. So you're sitting here and Kat goes out on a limb and she starts throwing Johnson under the bus. She says that Johnson and Ben, they said that Tez and Keeley were coasters and they weren't playing the game. What was your reaction to that? Was that a perception you were aware of until she brings this up?
It wasn't a perception that I was aware of until Kat mentions it. Obviously, that's Johnson's read on my game. Little did he know what was going on behind the scenes. But it did shock me that Johnson, Johnson also called me like a weak player. There was far more in that tribal council than what made the air. So,
which is interesting because he's sort of like, oh, no, it didn't happen. And then he decides to, I guess, apparently bury himself further.
Yeah, I can't remember what he said, but it was so good where he was saying like, oh, thank you for bringing that to my attention. Thank you for mentioning that in front of absolutely everyone, Kat. So it was quite funny how all of that came out and how it ended up in the end. We were walking into that tribal council voting off Johnson. I didn't connect with Johnson straight away. And I guess it was a mutual thing between us in the beginning, but it was shocking to be standing up at my first tribal council, having to flip the vote onto Kat. And I thought that was normal though. Like I thought, oh, this is tribal council. You can get up, do whatever you want, change the vote. This is the norm.
To be fair, it was the norm for your season specifically. But yeah, talk to me more about that. When Mark, because you're the first person that Mark beckons to the side and basically says, we're going to flip the vote on Kat. Were you immediately just like, let's go along with it? Were you initially hesitant and trying to keep the vote onto Johnson? How easily did this vote flip?
I wouldn't say that it flipped easily. There was still some convincing involved, at least for me, with Brooke and Faith. However, Kat at the end of the scramble, she was absolutely everywhere. She was so flighty. And I do remember saying to Mark, I was like, oh, we need to keep an eye on that one. I'm a bit concerned there. And so when he brought it up at Tribal Council, I was absolutely down to vote Kat off straight away. She is an incredible person as well. She's so smart. So I think she would have become really dangerous if she had gotten any more time in the game. But Faith was very interested. Faith knew that Kat was kind of coming for her, so she was all in. Brooke was a little bit harder to convince. I think she wanted to still go in with the same plan from the beach. I'm not sure what her history is with live tribals, but she eventually came round, which is great.
Well, what's interesting is that you're more than happy to go along with this, but there is a moment in the next episode when you and Faith come back and you talk about how maybe this was a little too flashy from Mark's perspective. You didn't love the spotlight that's shown on him. So talk to me more about that. What were these mixed emotions coming out of your first ever tribal council?
There were so many emotions. The immediate one was, what is Mark doing? Is he trying to put some heat on me? And behind the scenes, it doesn't come out in the episode, but even Don is trying to put a bit of heat on me after that vote, saying, we've got to lower Mark's threat level a little bit, so we're going to increase yours. And I'm like, no, let's not do that. Like, let's keep all the heat on Mark. And so when that happened, I thought, has Mark done this to actually put me in a position where I am the next person to go? As we see, you tend to go for, I guess, the allies of the stronger players to weaken them before you go for the head of the snake. So I was really nervous to continue playing with Mark.
Well, that perhaps that causes you to make some more connections in the tribe here, because I want to talk about Tez. Tez told me that you and Sally and him did have an alliance going on in Baron 1.0. So talk to me a bit more about this, because then we're going to start getting into Operation Snuff the Weasel.
So fun. I don't really remember having a specific alliance with Tez on Baron 1.0. We certainly formed it in Bounty 2.0 because I remember we were swinging on a hammock and somebody said, let's call ourselves the Swingers. I was like, okay, great. This sounds fantastic. Me, Sally, and Tez. But Tez and I did get along on Baron 1.0. We bonded over lots of different things. The thing for me with Tez, though, was I watched him running information between both sides, and he was basically a spy for Mark and Brooke. And there were times when I'd be sitting there and Tez was just kind of there listening in on the conversation. I was like, oh, this guy's good, but I'm onto you, Tez. Yeah.
Interesting. So then how close do you actually get to Operation Snuff the Weasel at Baron 1.0? Because we'll get into this episode 6 vote where, it becomes Caleb, but then it ultimately becomes Johnson. But what's interesting is you and Faith do say at one point, okay, it's got to be Tez. You're mentioning all these ways that he's coming across shady and seedy and he's in Mark's corner. Why did you ultimately not make the move on Tez there?
So, look, it was kind of between Tez and Caleb. They were the options of that vote. When we pitched it to Sally, she was keen for Caleb, which I knew. I'd already had a conversation with Sally and knew she was more interested in Caleb. So we went in that direction, which I was quite happy for. Whoever was interested in either Caleb or Tez, I was down to move on that. So Tez didn't get very far in the end. Brooke was not interested in taking out Tez either, for good reason. Tez is her little spy, so it makes a lot of sense. And it was interesting when Brooke said that to us. My little radars went up and I thought, oh yeah, this is like confirmation that Tez is her little spy. So it very quickly kind of moved more down the Caleb road rather than Operation Stuff the Weasel. That one was put on hold.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Caleb because this was, a couple sliding door moments where maybe Caleb would have gone out the door. And obviously, the ending of the season looks quite different. But talk to me more about your perception of this guy through Baron 1.0. Because the reason why it seems like you're vocalizing that you went for him initially is because you felt that he was a little bit of a loose cannon, that he was unreliable. So talk to me more about that.
Caleb on Baron 1.0, he was like a wild boy. He was just running around catching crabs a lot of the time. It was hard to pin him down for a conversation. But when you did, he spilt the beans. When he creates the corn chip cartel, he came back and told me everything about it. And he was like, you should come and join us in the corn chip cartel. And I'm hearing this name, Mike. I'm like, corn chip cartel? What is going on? This is crazy. So he was pretty loose in terms of information. He'd also walk into camp and just say, Johnson and Ben have found an idol. And he would say it really loudly because Johnson and Ben would spend a lot of time in the jungle. We were assuming foraging for idols, but Caleb would just kind of come out and scream it out loud. And I guess you see some of that come out at the tribal council where Harry goes home, where he goes in there and is just, death to all returnees. He kind of comes out of nowhere with this information. And so for me, I wasn't sure how I was going to be able to work with Caleb when he was so erratic at times.
So then it seems like you're trying to put the wheels into motion to make this happen. You go to Johnson, you go to Ben. So what ends up going on here? Because we're surprised by the fact that it was a straightforward Johnson vote. Was there a particular moment or interaction where you're like, plan's off, we can't do this?
Plan was off when I found out that it had gone too far. Yeah. Because for me, I don't need a majority vote at tribal council. Like, I'm okay to have unhappy families where we don't all agree to vote off Johnson. I'm happy to kind of just have that core five, which was going to be Sally, Faith, myself, Johnson, and Ben. Like, I was happy to move forward with this 5 alliance. But then, information is spilling out to Brooke. It's spilling out to Tez. It went too far too quickly. And not only that, Johnson and I, we didn't have a great relationship. We do now. I absolutely love Johnson. But as soon as I spoke to him, he was kind of like, okay, thank you for that information. I'm going to go and talk to absolutely everybody about it now and make sure that this is what's happening. And I'm like, no. There's only 5 of us who are in this plan, Johnson, and that is it. Nobody else is on board. This is not a unanimous vote. This is one where we kind of straddle the middle and we make sure the split is where it needs to be so that this one can come through as a total blindside. So as soon as word kind of got out, I was like, kill the vote. We're also going into tribe swap the next day, so it would have been quite dangerous to piss a lot of people off by blindsiding them.
Well, as you mentioned, you do go into tribe swap, and it's a pretty good draw for you. All things considered, you do go to tribal council a lot before the pre-merge, but obviously you have Mark and Faith who are in your alliance. You have Sally, who it seems like you are close to. So as you're taking all this in and also bringing in the new faces of Richard and Lyndall, what was your perspective? Did you feel like automatically, okay, I've got a good hold on this tribe?
Yeah, I was so happy. I could have done like a high kick, Mike. I was stoked. It sucked not to have Brooke over on our tribe, but at the same time, I was so happy to have Rich, especially. He was someone that I was really keen to work with.
Oh.
And we had Lyndall. So a lot of it was quite familiar to me, still having Don and Caleb and Tez was excellent. I was a very happy girl at Tribe Swap.
Talk to me more about Richard here. We'll talk about the relationship that you built later on, but what was
Yeah.
it that made him a person of interest to you before you even crossed over to the other side?
Yeah, I think I could just tell that Richard and I would have similar outside life backgrounds, and that we could potentially cut through some of the fluffy stuff and get straight into the boardroom and make decisions together. So I was pretty keen to work with Rich for those reasons. And I thought that he would be quite a strategic player as well.
So let's get into all the stuff that Bounty 2.0 is going to fold out for you. So initially, when you get here, because we'll get into this Dawn vote, which really is like one of your crowning moves, I still think, even in the retrospect of the season. What was your sense as to who you were working with? Because at the end of this Dawn vote, it is you, Faith, Sally, Tez, and then Lyndall and Richard. So were you looking to bring these former bounty people in automatically, or was a tribe line pretty staunchly there when you first hit that beach?
For me, I was not Baron strong at all. I was pretty keen to play with Richard and Lyndall in whatever way that looked like. And I was still really interested in voting out Tez or Caleb. They were kind of my first two targets to keep Rich and Lyndall. It didn't exactly go that way because other things happened throughout the day, and other people become more urgent. But I was happy to play with anyone and everyone. But I mean, head office ended up dominating that pre-merge season, didn't it?
Well, you say a lot of things happened that day. That would be an understatement because, yeah, I believe the series of events, correct me if I'm wrong here, is like, yes, it's a Tez vote initially, but then Sally decides to tell Dawn, hey, I think we want to turn things on Mark eventually. Dawn tells Mark, and then it becomes a Sally vote, and then obviously you'll push things last second to make it a Dawn vote. But what was your reaction when essentially you get told by Mark, like, okay, plans change, we're voting for Sally? Did that immediately make you want to take action?
Pretty much, yeah. I'm standing there and I'm agreeing to Sally. I'm not totally opposed to voting off Sally. I throughout the entire game, it was very much a anyone but me mentality was the priority. But at the same time, I thought we were firm on Tez. I woke up early that morning, Mike, and I got the Tez vote in motion. I don't normally take morning meetings, but I did that morning just to get Tez across the line. And so for Mark to change it, it did annoy me. But not only that, he's changing it onto Sally, who is someone that is in my corner, and she is not in his at all. So I want Sally around. Don is also ride or die for Mark, and he's never going to work with me. So when it came from Don, it actually felt like Mark was trying to test mine and Faith's loyalty to see if we were part of Sally's plan, which we actually weren't. We didn't know about it at all. And I just thought, you know what? I don't want this to happen. Like, this is very beneficial for Mark's game, but it is not beneficial for mine. If Sally goes, Don is still not going to work with me. Like, he is so interested in working in Mark that that's never going to happen.
So then are you just walking into tribal council being like, somehow I need to make this vote happen? Do you have an actual plan of like, I'm going to whisper to this person who whispers to this person? I want to know how spur of the moment this was, Keeley.
Oh, it's so spur of the moment. Walking into tribal council, I am just kind of filled with fire, and I'm ready to kind of get going and do something. I don't know what I'm going to do, but I'm sitting there and I'm like, Keeley, you have to do this. If you don't do this, then you have to write down Sally's name. And I didn't want to do that. So what was perfect was when Tez decided to have a little argument with Caleb at tribal council, and it was my perfect cover to start whispering to Faith. And, Faith and I were so close, and I knew that she really had my back, and that she was down to kind of do these types of things. So as soon as Faith was on board, I thought, excellent, I've got someone in my corner. Richard and Lyndall are so nervous that one of them is going home that night. So taking advantage of that was kind of critical to the Don vote. Richard, obviously, his whole face drops when he hears that the vote's changing at Tribal Council. For me, this is very normal. Like, this is the Tribal Council I'm used to. But Rich is not used to this at all. And I think playing upon their vulnerabilities at that time was really helpful. I did tell Sally, I whispered in her ear, I said, hey, Don's trying to blow up your game. I need you to vote for Don tonight if you don't want to go home. So she was down, and I did whisper in Tez's ear because I was hoping that Tez could become my spy and not Mark's spy anymore. So he got on board for the vote too. But it was all under the cover of that little argument going on.
Did you ever contemplate whispering something to Mark, considering he was in your alliance, or was this something you purposely wanted to leave him in the dark about?
Yeah, I needed to leave Mark in the dark on this one because Mark stares people down, and, it freaks them out, and they would have flipped right back to either Sally or Tez, because Caleb is actually still on the Tez vote. He's a few steps behind all of us. So I think Mark has the capability to do that. I knew that it was a decision that blindsides Mark, but at the same time, I kind of wanted to show Mark, this isn't just your game. Like, I'm playing this game too. I want to work with you, but I'm not interested in just playing for your benefit. Like, we're also going to play for my benefit as well. So that vote had, I guess, a few different elements to it in terms of progressing myself forward.
Did you feel like you had gotten the vote across the line by the time it was time to vote? Like, were you surprised at all that it actually happened and you were able to get Don out?
I was a little surprised. Like, I think I'm smiling at the end of it because I'm like, I've done it. I was shocked that people listened to me, but I was well liked amongst the tribe, so I'm not surprised that they wanted to get on board. At that tribal council, Richard actually, it doesn't make the air, but he had a scroll and he pretended like it was an advantage for him.
I remember hearing this, yeah.
Yeah, for him and Lyndall to go back to the beach. When that played, it was kind of weird because I was like, I'd be getting out of here and going back to the beach. But when he did that, I remember kind of looking at him and Lyndall, and I was like, that's fine, you guys can go. I've still got the numbers for Don. I was like, Caleb is on Tez, Mark and Don are on Sally, and I have got myself, Faith, and Sally and Tez. Like, we're still riding this one home on Don. So even though that was a bit of a lumpy bumpy tribal, I did feel confident that we could get it through.
Well, talk about Mark's response to this lumpy bumpy tribal, because this is one of the few times that he is left out here. Did you feel like there was any sort of damage control you needed to do, or was this an easy reaction and he's like, yep, water under the bridge, let's move on?
No, Mark doesn't react the same way that I react, which is, okay, water under the bridge, move on. He was not happy with me. And I felt it throughout a lot of Bounty 2.0. There just felt like there was this distance between us post that vote. He didn't like being left out. His response was kind of like, I would have voted Don out. I just want to know and be on the vote. And I hear that, but I don't think Mark would have wanted to have voted Don out. Don was a Mark loyalist. That wouldn't make sense for his game. But yeah, he was a bit cross with me. Yeah.
Let's talk some more head office here, because Faith personifies herself as, okay, I'm the go-between with Keeley and Mark. I'm the one that's keeping this all together. How accurate was that? Do you feel like Faith was sort of the intermediary between the two of you, especially after moments like this?
Look, Mark and I still spoke all the time. We get along really, really well, and we were super close out there. Was Faith the intermediary? Maybe at times, maybe, but we would still have direct conversation. I certainly felt that after the Don vote, Mark was more on Faith's side than he was on mine. And I was a little bit worried that Mark might try and come for me because of that, because I did leave him out of the vote. Whereas Faith could kind of say, I thought Keeley told you at Tribal Council, and she could kind of get away with it, whereas I couldn't. So I was always a little bit nervous, and I did need Faith there to make sure that Mark remained a good boy and didn't come for me.
Talk to me more about this relationship with Faith. What was it that drew you two so closely together? Was there a particular moment or interaction?
Look, there was on Baron 1.0 Beach. We had exchanged a couple of dark jokes, and it was kind of on from there. We just got along so well, and she ended up becoming, like my best friend out there, someone who really had my back, and was playing with me and not necessarily against me, which was great. It's a lot to be said to have an ally like that, because you could walk into Tribal Council and, flip the vote because you've got someone in your corner. So we got along so well, but she also got along very well with Mark as well. So did I. So head office made sense. But head office, like any great workplace, was toxic at times. We're all working together to get everybody else out, but we're also working together to make sure that none of us get any more powerful than we already are. So, I am trying to take out Don because that's a support to Mark. Mark wants to take out Sally because she's a support to me. So, there is a lot of Keeley versus Mark, and Faith is kind of there mediating in the middle at times.
Yeah, I want to hear more.
Faith was more with me than Mark.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from what she expressed to you, because we get, definitely some choice words from the two of you about Mark is this jealous boyfriend. We're his sister wives. He's a dictator.
Yeah.
So talk to me about this mood, this quote toxicness that you were saying. Like, what was this dynamic actually like to prompt those types of comparisons?
Yeah, Mark just has this ability to clone himself and be absolutely everywhere at all times. It felt like Faith and I could never get a moment alone. As soon as we would start speaking, Mark would show up, and he was there. He was ready to be part of the conversation. So there was, it only happened once, but it obviously made the air, where we sneak out in the middle of the night. It's early hours of the morning, and I'm kind of like, Faith, we have to go now if we ever want a moment to talk. And it wasn't long after that Mark gets up and comes and joins us anyway. So it was more just that he wanted to be privy to all conversations. And actually, that's a very good Survivor player. But it becomes incredibly frustrating for me and Faith, who obviously are trying to keep an eye on him and make sure that he isn't coming for us, but also that he's not getting any more powerful.
Well, in this next episode, you, again, were able to cobble together this majority to take out Dawn, but then at the next Tribal Council, you say, okay, it's time to turn things onto Lyndall. Talk to me more about this. Was this something you had planned for a while, or as the show depicted, was it more so prompted by, oh, Rich is taking a long time talking with the other side, we should get rid of a bounty person?
It was exactly that. And it was actually a really weird vote. That's the one vote that sticks out for me that was just weird. Rich did take too long with the tribe on the other side, especially when he went back and hugged Asha for a very long time. And you could tell that more was being exchanged there over just throw the challenge. Everybody was suspicious of Rich when we got back to the beach. And I mean everyone. And it's really hard to convince everybody to not vote somebody off. You all of a sudden look like an issue when you're doing that. But I wanted Rich to stay. I got along with Rich far better and easier than I did with Lyndall. I wasn't sure where Lyndall was sitting. Rich and I was having better strategic conversation. And so the best thing that I could do was convince everyone that the bounty people are suspicious. And once the bounty people became suspicious, I could move on to Lyndall and say, Lyndall is suspicious, and kind of move that heat away from Rich. Somehow it worked, and Lyndall went home. But it was a bit of a weird one because Lyndall didn't do anything apart from be on bounty with Rich in the beginning.
Well, that vote is also an interesting one in terms of your relationship with Tez, because this is one where you tell him basically like, all right, I'm going to tell you at tribal council who it is. And
Oh yeah.
certainly he's very angry about that. And this will cause him to sort of go rogue, but claim that he didn't hear anything. So were you aware of the way you were making him feel when you're like, okay, I got a name for you, but I'm going to tell you at the last minute?
I mean, I'm obviously not aware of his feelings unless he tells me, which he didn't. However, Tez has now got a history of just shooting his boat off into the dark. And not only that, he comes, when he comes to tribal council, he really spills the beans to the point where I'm really worried that too much information is getting out and the vote is not going to go ahead as planned. After tribal council, Tez also comes back to the beach and reveals to everyone kind of everything that happened in that vote, or what he knows about that vote. So for me, Tez was leaking too much information, and I couldn't afford to have the Lyndall vote get back to Rich and Lyndall, because when I look at Rich, I do see someone capable of corralling people like Tez, Sally, Caleb, Lyndall to come together and take out one of us. And yeah, Tez just leaked information too much. So for me, he was someone I was going to tell at tribal council.
So as we end up losing Lyndall here, as you mentioned, from our perspective, it seems like you are strengthening this relationship with Richard. You formed this board of directors alliance. You keep corporatizing all of your alliance names here, Keeley. But yeah, talk to me about making this quote unquote official. Was this something natural, or were you like, okay, Lyndall's gone, it's time for me to lock down something with Rich?
When Lyndall is sent home, that is a blindside on Rich. Rich didn't know. So I also have to go back to the beach and smooth things over with Rich and explain to him why Lyndall is gone. So that is a little bit hard. I think Rich believed me, though, that everyone was super suspicious of him. And at the end of the day, it was either him or Lyndall, and he's lucky that it wasn't him. I think Rich and I had already kind of solidified something between the two of us by this point anyway, but I suppose this helped. I mean, Rich didn't have many other places to go at this point. His other options are working with, Caleb and Tez. And Tez was really hard to work with at times because he was just kind of spouting out information here, there, and everywhere. So all of a sudden, board of directors is formed. I mean, it was Rich's idea. He's telling me about what the WAVE acronym means on his hat. We got along really well. He shared a lot of information with me.
So as we
get me out.
Yeah, I was gonna say. Well, so as we get into this wild redemption beach vote, as you're mentioning about Rich's fortuitous vote towards you, I mean, look at all the positions you're in, right? You have head office of you, Faith, and Mark. We didn't even talk about you, Faith, and Sally in the Three Wise Women. You've got this thing going on with Richard. Which alliance would you say you were most loyal to? Because we do see a couple times you sort of weighing between Three Wise Women versus head office.
Yeah, of course. Look, I'm trying to, if I can, keep all sides happy, which is why, Don, Caleb, Tez are kind of my targets, because it keeps all of those other allies out of the equation. I really want to keep those people happy coming into merge. I had a particular interest in Rich because he had such a strong relationship with Simon. And when I saw Simon, I was like, oh, yeah, that guy is made for Survivor challenges. Like, he just glides through them. And I know that I am not great at challenges. And so strategically...
As the person who won 2 immunity challenges.
We don't know that yet, Mike. But I would look at Simon and I was like, I need him because he's going to be wearing that individual immunity necklace. And if I've got Simon in my pocket, it's 2 votes for me going into tribal councils. I can be the strategist there. So I was investing quite heavily in Rich in order to make that become a 3 in the merge tribe. That's what I was really interested in.
So to that point, when you go to tribal council in episode 11 here, you don't know anything about this twist. So going in, it seemed like from our perspective, the plan was it was going to be a 3-2-1, that the 3 wise women were going to carry through and vote out Caleb. Was that actually the case? If this was not a twisty vote, would Caleb have been gone here?
Yeah, Caleb would have been gone. Absolutely.
Wow.
Yeah. Bye, Caleb.
Wow. I mean, so were
Yeah.
you already sort of like preparing to do damage control there as well? Because that's something that leaves Mark out. It leaves Rich out as well.
Yeah, look, I was, but at the same time, you know, when I was looking at Mark and I'm thinking we're going to go to merge pretty soon, we've only got a couple more votes. Mark was already not well liked on the other side. Neither was I, actually. They would often tell me and Faith and Mark that, you know, we're toast. So when I looked at Mark, I thought, you've got really no choice but to work with me, and I've kind of got no choice to work with you. And even if we blindside each other, we're going to come back to one another. So I was okay with taking out Caleb without Mark knowing.
Well, that all gets scuttled when you sit down and get told
Redemption
the
Beach.
impending words. Tonight's going to be a little different. So, this big twist gets dropped on you. The three people with the most votes are going to redemption. Chaos. It scatters from all of our perspectives. So, I guess we'll sort of go beat by beat through this. As soon as this news gets broken, was it an immediate like lock in, okay, let's send the three non-head office people, or were you already starting to run through your mind the scenarios where you can send other people instead?
Yeah, I mean, initial thoughts are, yeah, let's send the non-head office people. That sounds like a great idea. But then I'm also thinking it would be really funny to send Mark out to Redemption Beach as well. I'm kind of thinking a lot of things, and also thinking nothing as well, because it's a 6-person tribe and 3 people going to Redemption Beach. And, you know, there's like no way that you can really cut it at this point. A lot of us are going tonight, whether we like it or not. I didn't expect to be going, but voila.
Yeah, so we see you at one point whisper to Faith basically as much of like, maybe we should send Mark. And then this, of course, prompts the great comment from Mark back to you of like, don't gun for me, you mole. I know what you're doing.
I know.
But were you actually like putting the wheels in motion to do that? Or was it more so just throwing the idea out and then it immediately gets scuttled?
It was throwing the idea out, Mike. We're all throwing random things out. At one point, Richard says to me, let's send Faith out to Redemption Beach. And I, you know, when he says that, Sally and Tez show up. I mean, not Tez, Sally and Caleb show up. And I'm like, no, we can't do that. That's a crazy idea. So there was a lot. Everyone was up for Redemption Beach. We were saying everybody's name. It was actually pretty hard to keep up with what was going on.
Yeah, I mean, as those votes are coming in, obviously you're going to be surprised that your name is on the parchment, but did you think things had defaulted back to that plan of the 3 non-head office people, or did you think Mark was going? Did you think Faith was going?
I thought it had defaulted back to the 3 non-head office people. That's where I thought it was going. But alas, I was in the urn.
Yeah, I need your reaction to this, because Richard told me that basically he assumed that he was going. And so he's like, I need somebody to connect with who I know is on my side. So I'm going to vote for Keeley to like drag her out of the game with me. Obviously does not end up happening. But what is your reaction when that one vote has your name on it?
I mean, I don't really remember feeling too much apart from, I remember saying to Mark, I was like, did you vote for me in the end? Like, you mole? And which he didn't. I was really surprised that I was in there, especially out of everyone, because I was well connected. I wouldn't have been surprised if I saw Faith's name in the urn, because she did rub a few people up the wrong way, like Caleb and Sally and Rich. So I was surprised. Rich did tell me his reasoning when I got back. And look, it makes sense. I would have teamed up with him out on Redemption Beach to vote out whoever the third person was, whatever the scenario was in the end. But look, at the end of the day, I'm actually really glad that I went to Redemption Beach. It was such a good time.
Are you saying that sarcastically? Let's get into this, because
it really was.
It's like
Mike,
a nightmare.
It was so good.
Well, talk to me more about this then.
No, okay, so we get there the first night. That kind of sucked because it's dark. There are crater-like sized holes everywhere. Caleb is telling me about a story where a woman got eaten by crabs, and it's a true story as well. I was like, I don't know if this guy's lying to just freak us out or what's going on. But for me, I grew up on Barren Beach with nothing anyway. So I was keen to just lay down and go to sleep and let the rain let it rain on me. Like, whatever. It didn't bother me that much. The elements were not that bad for me. As soon as you accept them for what they are, it's less frustrating. The next day we woke up, beautiful day. Caleb built a shelter. I decorated it with decor. We're eating really well. Caleb's, finding crabs. We've got fire going. All of our clothing is dry. It was beautiful. I loved it. I found the key for the treasure chest for the advantage in the challenge, which I didn't need because I sucked so badly at the challenge anyway. And the motif was one of my greatest souvenirs that I could have taken from Redemption Beach. So I'm really glad that I went there in the end.
Was there any strat chat between the three of you? I know, like, I believe Sally told me in my interview with her that, like, she did want to try to bring the 3 redemption people towards the end of the game. Was that a thing that the 3 of you were talking about while you were there?
I wasn't talking about a final 3 with them. No, I was talking about, I was talking to Caleb about voting Sally off. I was talking to Sally about voting Caleb off.
Right, because you would assume that you had assumed probably that it was going to be a vote between you 3.
I thought it could be. I had a lot of different ideas in my head as to how this twist or how we might get out of this twist could be. So I was talking to both of them about those potential options and what we would do, etc. I don't know how much they were strategizing with each other. I never really saw it, and I was pretty good at always being around. I had really embodied Mark at this point, including myself.
Be the Mark you wish to see in the world.
That's it. That was me. So I would often send like Caleb out to go and get crabs or extra fronds, and that's when I could talk to Sally, and like vice versa. So I was always kind of there in both of their ears, convincing them to stick with me, and all will be okay.
You mentioned the motif becomes a larger motif in many manners of speaking later on. So was this just you were struck by inspiration? Was it more so like I can use this for something later? How did this night expedition that turns into a game-changing crafts project come to be?
I saw that on the top of the treasure chest when it first arrived, and I was like, that looks like an idol. That looks like the idol that I saw Brooke have on Baron when she played it at Tribal Council. So I wanted it. I didn't know what I wanted it for yet. I had no exact plans. I just knew I needed it. It would come in handy later, whether I pretend it was an advantage or a clue that I found out on Redemption Beach, or craft it into a full idol. I didn't know its potential yet, but I was very interested in cracking that off the top. I remember waking up in the middle of the night and I was like, okay, I have to keep this fire going. But also I need to get that motif while Sally's sleeping.
So now this twist fully gets unveiled that Caleb's going back into the game. Whoever loses the immunity challenge, you and Sally are joining, but without a vote. And we see a throwing effort, at least in part, on both ends here. Did you think if your old tribe had won that immunity challenge and you were sent over with the new Baron tribe, do you think you were as dead to rights as they were saying? I mean, they were arguing to a certain aspect, let's throw the challenge and let's vote Keeley off while we can.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. They told me to my face when they're competing in that challenge, which ultimately like saves myself and Sally, and we go back to Bounty 2.0. They had to bench so many players because we were such a tiny tribe. And so there's a lot of them sitting there on the bench, and it's me and Sally and a big group of them. And they are sitting there and they are courting Sally. They are telling Sally, like, we love you. We want to work with you. You're totally fine. But then they look at me and they're like, but you're gone. Like, you are dead to us. And I'm like, what the heck is going on here? Like, what information has got back to the other tribe for them to want me out so bad? But, there's already information going back and forth. Even when Lottie kind of comes at me in the bluffing challenge, you can tell how much information is getting back there. You see Tez leaking information to the other side during the joint competition where we're holding it above our heads with another person on the other side. So word has obviously gotten back. And, even in the Redemption Beach challenge, the one that Caleb wins, the other tribe is cheering for Sally and Caleb, but they are not cheering for me at all, which is so sad. I was like, oh. But yeah, no, I was toast. I was gone.
Well, the good news is you are not, because the efforts to throw the challenge by your allies ends up paying off more successfully. So you are going back to Tribal
Yeah, tell me
Council
about it.
with Bounty 2.0. But Sally approaches you on Redemption Beach with this plan. Let's go for Mark. And again, it seems like you then go to Mark and are basically like, okay, Sally's coming for you. We've got to get rid of her. The thing that, Dawn did to Mark that you said, let's get rid of Dawn for. So talk to me
Yeah.
about this change. Were you immediately, as soon as Sally told you that, like, okay, I have to make sure she's the next gone if we go to Tribal Council?
Yes and no. Sally's idea to vote off Mark, great idea. But Sal, babe, you don't have a vote, and neither do I. So who is voting out Mark? Only Faith. Faith is the last person in this alliance. And I don't think Caleb's interested in voting off Mark. They are really close. I wouldn't have pitched that to Caleb straight away. And Rich, you just never really know. So for me, I thought Mark is interested in voting off Sally. I know that. Richard, I think, is interested in voting off Sally as well. So that's the avenue that I'm going to take. Not that I really have much currency at this point. I'm really having a night off and hoping I don't go home. So I'm also trying not to convince people too much because I don't want to become the target.
Well, let's say you and Sally did have votes. What do you think the plan would have been? Would it have been another 3-2-1 with the three wise women coming over the top again?
Yeah, Caleb would have gone home.
So you would have actually you would have succeeded on the play that you attempted.
Yeah, it probably would have gone back to Caleb again. And I think Rich would have been interested in that too. I had a great relationship with Rich, despite Redemption Beach. I mean, I never forgot about Redemption Beach. I renamed it Revenge Beach on Rich. But I think we would have gone for Caleb if I had a vote and Sally had a vote.
All right, well, let's talk about, I guess besides that one ballot that had your name on it, probably the biggest blindside you'll experience this season, which is Mark turning on Faith. In retrospect, was there anything you were picking up in terms of the vibe around camp that made you feel like Faith was going to be in danger here?
No, not at all. When I came back, Mark was a little bit weird. But I don't know, there was like a weird excitement in Mark, which is really strange to say. I guess maybe he was really excited for Tribal that night. I don't know. But I remember, Mark was talking to me and he was kind of like, oh, I made a deal with Simon not to vote you off or like to look after you. And we threw the challenge to get you back and blah, blah, blah. And he was like, you're safe tonight. And I was like, okay, sweet. So maybe it is Sally. I never for a moment thought it was Faith until we were in Tribal Council. And I did pick it up. Yeah.
Interesting. What was it about Tribal Council? Was it answers or just vibes?
Before we went to Tribal Council, actually, Rich sat me down on the beach, apologized for sending me to Redemption. He told me he was acting a little bit odd. He said to me, I don't know what's going to happen tonight. It could be quite shocking. But he was like, I'm going to write Sally's name down. And I was like, okay, great. Like, write Sally's name down. It was odd, though. There was a lot of odd behavior, but I wasn't picking up that it was Faith. When we were at Tribal Council, I noticed that the three boys are talking about the wave acronym on Rich's hat, which I know about. And they're talking about waves. They're talking about the ocean. They're talking about, a tribe member being swept out to sea. There's a lot of play on words. And that was the only Tribal Council where I felt my stomach drop. And Caleb, it didn't make the air, but Caleb said something along the lines of, you have to pick the buds before they bloom. And as he said that, I thought, oh my gosh, it's me or it's Faith. Mark's decided to get rid of one of us. In that moment. I knew it. I knew it wasn't Sally.
Did you try to start another live Tribal Council to try to scuttle things once more?
No, because I don't have a vote anyway. It's really strange. And maybe I could have done something. I don't know, but I have no currency at that Tribal Council. I have nothing to bargain with apart from relationships. And I do talk about that a little bit where I'm kind of I'm really hoping that my relationships carry me through tonight, because I was worried that it was me or Faith.
So it is Faith. What's your reaction to this? It seems like it wasn't actual shock, but I imagine there were a lot of emotions attached considering how close the two of you were. It seems like you really got each other. So, what were your emotions in this moment?
I was like heartbroken. I was so sad. Yeah, I was really sad. I wasn't angry or anything like that. I was just sad that Faith had left the game, especially because I'd been out on Redemption Beach. We hadn't really had much time to come back and just hang out again as like two best girlfriends would and gossip and share information. And then she's gone. And she's also taken by Mark, which shocked me because we were a tight three, but not only that, I thought that Mark and Faith were incredibly close at this point, closer than what I was with Mark. So I was shocked that that happened and sad. Lucky it's a long walk back to camp. So I could, cry it out.
Well, there was one thought that I imagine was ruminating in your head, because it's one of the things that Faith tells you, which is don't trust Mark or Caleb. As we get into the post-merge here, how much were those words echoing in your head throughout the rest of your game?
Yeah, look, I mean, I hear those words. I don't disagree. I never had like full trust in Mark. I always had an eye on him because he is so good. This game is like effortless for him at times, it feels. So I could hear those words, but at the same time, for me, revenge is not really in my wheelhouse. I'm going to play with the people that I've got to play with. And if that means I have to play with Caleb, I will. Like, I will play with Caleb. I will play with Mark as well. And I don't want to let go of Mark just yet. I'm still learning so much from him. We're going into merge very soon. And I know people want him out. So he is a big, beautiful shield for me for as long as I can keep him around.
So what was your reaction? Because now the shoe's on the other foot. Obviously, now he leaves you in the dark about a vote. What did you make of his explanation to you when you found out what Faith had said to his face while you were gone on Redemption Beach?
Yeah, it does surprise me. That's very Faith. I was like, damn it, Faith, don't say these things. These are inside thoughts or sister wives only discussions. We can't be telling Mark that we're shopping around for a new husband. So it didn't surprise me that she had said that. The other side of it is, Caleb was not a fan of Faith either. I think she had kind of spooked Rich a few times too. So it didn't surprise me that they were all on board for the vote. I was much more forgiving towards Mark for Faith than he was for me with Don. I was kind of like, look, don't worry about it. Let's just keep going from here. Like, let's just see where we can go together.
I'm curious because you and Faith do have a conversation at one point about how, like, you want to let Mark go to early jury. One of the things that Faith does tell Mark is like, hey, the returnees, we have this plan to get them to jury, and that's basically it. So if this plan ends up going off and Sally goes instead of Faith, when were you anticipating getting rid of Mark? Would you have wanted to keep him around as a shield as you end up doing, or was it going to be ditch him as soon as possible?
I'd love to keep Mark as long as possible, obviously. For me, I really wanted Mark as the mayor of Jury Villa. That is a perfect spot.
Well, ended up working out well for you in one part. Yeah.
Sure did. And you kind of, I really felt this, especially when they were coming for Mark. And that's the night Rich goes home, I was like, too soon. One more vote. I just need one more vote to go through and get Mark on the jury. Mayor of Jury Villa, fantastic. But anywhere on the jury is great for me. I couldn't keep Mark around for too long because the tribe, they didn't want him around. And it's hard to convince everyone. Again, like, you can't convince everyone not to go for someone that they want so badly. But I did want to start traveling towards my Simon and Richard 3. That was where I wanted to go.
Yeah, so I want to talk more about that because in a conversation with Richard, you say at one point in the merge episode, I'm telling him he's my number one, but I don't have a number one. Was this like a purposeful choice you made in the absence of Faith, that you had no faith in other people?
Pretty much. Yeah. I was like, I loved once, I'll never love again. No, look, I did say so. Richard was he was like quite an emotional player in the end. I thought he would have been more strategic and like cutthroat, but he wasn't. He was actually quite soft and which is a great trait to have.
Mm.
Actually, I wish I had a little bit more of that. But he would call me his number one, and so I just returned the favor. It wasn't true. I have no number one. Like my loyalty is to me, and no one else. Do I want to work with Richard? Yes, yes, I do. But yeah, Faith, I think was it for me. There was no one else next who could measure up.
Well, let's talk about some new faces you get to meet here. Now, as you mentioned, there was a lot of talk about how you and Mark and Faith were running things, but now you get to finally chat with some of these people that you never really had the time to sit down with in the pre-merge. Did you still get the sense that you were being perceived that way, or were you able to let people sort of put their walls down a little bit and actually get to know you?
No, I think I was still kind of perceived that way,
Mm.
which is not great. And also, Sally just kind of runs off to the other side as well. She comes back briefly for the Lottie vote, but I think she was pretty keen to go and play with other people. It was really good talking to Jackson and Ben again. Obviously, I already knew Ben, but he had this great relationship with Jackson. And I really liked Jackson. And I knew that Lottie was coming for him, which is also another reason why I'm down to get rid of Lottie. There's a lot of reasons for me to take Lottie out. But one of them was also to keep Jackson. I wanted to work with him and Ben. They were another good potential 3, and they adored Sally. So I was like, that could be a really cool 4 to be a part of. So that's what I was thinking in merge. Everybody else was a bit harder to work with. I couldn't really connect with Cameron or Loz. Blanche, I love Blanche, but I just couldn't get there with her on a strategic level.
So you mentioned Simon. Yeah, this is where we finally have the two of you sitting down and you get to work. You both seem to put this Lottie plan into motion. So
We
talk to
do.
me about this. This is something you had been anticipating, obviously. You wanted this trio with Simon and Richard to work out. So what was your first impression of him?
He's such a nice guy. He does everything for everybody, which is lovely. He would open the coconuts. He'd find me like these little bamboo straws as well. It's quite posh out there at times, Mike. So it was lovely. But Simon was also very keen to vote off Lottie. And that did surprise me a little
Yeah.
bit. I didn't know all the inner workings of his relationship with Lottie. I wasn't sure if it was 100% true, but he seemed pretty keen. And that vote, I think, for Simon and I kind of solidified our, alliance together, that we could work together in this game.
You talked about there were a lot of reasons to vote off Lottie. Describe some of them for me. Was this someone that you were coming into the merge being like, I have to gun for this person immediately? Or was it just
Yep.
Revenge out of the whole blind box bluffing challenge?
No, I won the blind box bluffing
true.
challenge. It was actually great. And I love that challenge because I'm very well trained in deception and how to spot it, but also how to fake it. So like twitching eye, it's people need to stop falling for that. People's eyes twitch because the sun is in them. It's not lying. But I just love that people fall for that stuff. So no, but I knew that Lottie was a powerhouse on that side and with Arsha. So when Arsha went home, I thought, great. But Lottie has the capability to rally the troops. That was very obvious when it came to merge. I looked at Lottie as almost my equivalent. And so I knew that she was dangerous, and I knew give her, more than a night with this tribe. And I actually think she could have got everyone in terms of the underdogs. I think she would have been the leader of that pack, and it would have been impossible for me to get in there, but as well as my other 3 shields in Mark, Brooke, and Simon. So a lot of reasons to get rid of her.
So you think in getting rid of her, again, you're preventing this newbie revolution from happening, but it was inevitable, and it starts the next day.
It
So
does.
I'm intrigued by this. You are basically considered a returnee, both by the players and by us. But as I imagine you're feeling that this resistance is happening, did you ever debate flipping on Brooke and Simon and Mark, basically being like selling them down the river, Jackson, Ben, I'm going to work with you instead?
Not really, because I was very quickly outcasted by that group. Even they saw me as a returnee. So it was always, the returnees plus Keeley. I was really grouped in there. So even if I flipped and went with them, I would be on like the bottom of their alliance, and I would probably just have to do what I was told, which I can do that sometimes, but not all the time. I like voting where I want to vote, and I like being a bit crafty with my votes. And I don't know if they were interested in that, and I don't know if they would have wanted to hear that coming from me, because something actually I didn't mention, Loz came to Barren Beach way back in the day. Loz then came back to her tribe and was telling them all like Keeley is like a genius, like she's a mastermind. And so there was also like a bit of that information coming out. And then I've had a bit of a background where things are going my way. And so I was a threat, and I knew that. I just wasn't as big of a threat as the 3 returnees who they really wanted gone first. But yeah, I don't think I could have gone into the other side.
I mean, we see a very intense afternoon, right, where this newbie group comes up with this plan to take out Mark, and it slowly leaks out. So when did you become aware of all of this? Did somebody tell you? Were you just picking up something weird? Were you also was Brooke also giving you a look from across the fire and you knew what to do?
I would have loved that. The look from Brooke. I wasn't trained on that yet. But yeah, who told me? I can't even remember. I could have found out from Rich or Sally. But I did find out from them. They did mention, it's Mark tonight. Rich and I had already been talking about actually voting Brooke out. And he came to me and he said, I've got the numbers for Brooke tonight. And I said, no, too soon. I wanted the returnees on the jury, and I did want them as long as possible because I knew the other side was hesitant in working with me anyway. So when I heard that, I thought, no, we need to push it out. And then Mark started coming out that he was the vote that night. And I thought, oh no, it's still too soon for any returnee. We need to get somebody else out. So yeah, it leaked from a few different sources.
That's interesting, though, that at least in that moment, you were maybe more amicable with Brooke going to... Yeah, talk to me a bit more, because this is a relationship we'll obviously see once Mark is gone. But what was your dynamic like with her at that point? Because you were working together in the beginning, but you just spent basically an entire other game away from her with forming this really tight relationship with Mark instead.
Yeah. Look, I absolutely love Brooke, but she's really good. She's so subtle. She plays a social strategic game. She uses her relationships to change people's minds and maneuver their votes, and she does it successfully on multiple occasions. And that is something that I really struggle with. So I need to get Brooke out. But at the same time, I'm very happy to keep Brooke as well. I don't want to do it before the jury. I do still need protection myself.
So we need to get into yet another wild live tribal council. So
that was crazy.
Yeah, let's start with the idol beat here. I guess A, did you know that Simon had given Mark this fake idol? And B, did you know that Mark had an idol in general, the one that he had found while you were in Redemption?
Mark told me he had an idol in tribal council. I had a gut feeling that he found an idol whilst I was on Redemption Beach. I just had a feeling somebody had an idol on our tribe, and I thought it was Mark. He has this like little silly smile that he does, and I was like, oh yeah, I feel like you've got something up your sleeve. But he didn't tell me until tribal council. I didn't know about Simon's fake coral idol until Mark told me about that too. And I thought, oh God, this is really quite insane tonight. And, that was a crazy tribal. Mark ran like an absolute muck. He was up, down, talking to Ben, talking to Caleb, talking to absolutely everyone. It was crazy. It was truly crazy. But where it ended up was, surprise.
Well, let's talk about that, because you mentioned so many times how key Rich was to your game, this tight relationship you had formed. It was you, him, and Simon. And then Mark comes over and says, it's Rich. It's got to be Rich. So what was your reaction to that? Because, Simon seemed like he was very amenable to just putting it onto Rich, and maybe that was due to things that we didn't necessarily see. What was your reaction to having to vote this guy out after cultivating such a long relationship?
Honestly, Mike, I was happy to,
Oh,
because I was really angry at Rich when I came into tribal council. I was already angry at Rich, and when we got in there, he actually whispered in my ear and he said, "I'm so sorry, I didn't get a chance to talk to you, but we're all voting Mark tonight." And I just said, "I already know about your plan and you need to change it, not tonight." And I told Rich that Mark has an idol, but, Rich is also talking to Simon, and Simon doesn't know Mark has a real idol. So Simon's telling Rich it's a fake idol. Rich is trying to triangulate data, which is very impressive to do in a live tribal council because there's so much going on. But the whole time, it just infuriated me. Rich was counting the numbers on his fingers, literally. And I'm sitting there thinking, Rich, we have the numbers if you and Loz are with us tonight. And if you're not, I'm like, then maybe you need to go home. And it was so disappointing because the night before we'd had a big group chat, myself, Mark, Simon, Rich, and Rich kind of said, I'll bring Loz along as well. And we agreed we would become a tight unit and get through a good portion of this merge game together. And just like that, overnight, he's switched and gone on Mark. So for me, when Mark said it's Rich, I did look at Simon and I said, are you on board for this? And he said yes. And then so I agreed. If Simon was down, I was down on Rich.
Well, Rich goes down, and so will Mark very soon. So yeah, you were able to escape the night, but it seems like you're still a little down. It seems like the newbies are going for you, but Mark seems confident that they're splitting the votes. We have Caleb. We can do this. By proxy, how confident were you? Because you had your perceptions of Caleb, you had your history with him. Did you anticipate him making the move that he ultimately ends up doing?
I mean, yes and no, I suppose. I thought he actually might have kept Mark in the game a little bit longer, but Caleb was also quite erratic at times. Like he walks in and he just says, such and such has an idol or whatever's going on. So you never know what he was going to do. But my thought was, I also have an idol in my pocket.
Right.
I could play it for Mark, but I thought if Mark wants to put his trust and faith in Caleb, so be it. I hope it works out because then we would be a majority and that's great for my game. But if not, at least I have my idol and I'll figure it out on the next vote. So it was sad to see Mark go, but it was great to see him become the mayor of Jury Villa.
Yeah, again, your plan ends up succeeding there. I want to talk about this idol here. At this high T reward challenge, you get rewarded for being, one of the last people to go here. First off, did you ring the bell early for Cameron, as you had joked about?
Well, it wasn't me, Mike. It was Ben had to ring it early. So
You just planted the idea.
Yeah, look, it's so hard because this timer is going down and it kind of at times would just jump. It was like the center was falling out and then it would jump down. And so we really don't know how long it is. Everyone's time was far shorter than it probably needed to be in the end. Cameron's was definitely the shortest because I was like, this guy, he just kind of betted on our team winning. Like he wasn't even in the challenge. He drives me insane as well. Like he's just annoying. Let's ring it early on him for fun. And Ben was down, so he does. And, bye-bye Cameron. But Cameron still got to eat a few things. Ben and I, we were so lucky. Like we literally had half the rice canister. Ben was actually in there for ages and it got to the point where he's like, okay, I think I'm done. And I was like, sweet, perfect. Like I'll ring the bell now and have my turn. And then I had so much time in there as well. I was just kind of wandering around waiting for the rice canister to get down to the bottom. But it was a good high tea reward.
Well, and it came with quite the high reward as well in the form of this idol.
Yeah.
So we see you tell Mark. Did you tell anyone else in this round, at least, that you had an idol?
Yeah, Simon.
Oh,
knew.
interesting. Okay, he must have been so excited considering that he had a fake one and now he actually has a real one sort of in store here.
Yeah, well, I mean, yeah. So, Simon's was a coral idol at the end of the day, but he was very excited. He was happy that I got it. Simon and I actually had a very close working relationship. I would take Simon pretty much all the way to the end, like final three.
Oh,
That's where I was. Yeah, I was pretty keen to go that far with Simon. Simon and I had both pissed enough people off that we would do quite well together towards the end. That's where I was. So he knew about my real idol, and after diving into the canister, and he brushed that off really quickly.
Did you get the feeling that anyone else was sort of side-eyeing you? Of course, everyone in these rewards searches up and down for an idol. Was anyone looking at you being like, "You spent the most time there. You could have walked away with something"?
Yeah, they were. And but when I walked into that situation where they're all waiting, I walked into it and I was just like, right, so which one of you guys found the idol? Because I tossed the place and I couldn't find a single thing. But I was like, but I found a lot of hollow spaces. And I was kind of like, Loz, any idols? You know, you did go first. So I think I did a good job of pushing that suspicion onto like the first few players over me. I think whilst people had suspicions, I don't think they thought I had the idol, especially getting through the mark vote. They split on me, even though their split it wasn't really a split. But I love watching them go to tribal council and how they'd split the votes. It was really entertaining for me. But I didn't play the idol there. So I thought maybe, okay, I've potentially gotten away with this, or like lowered that suspicion level that I even have one.
So Mark does end up going here. You get your wish, but be careful what you wish for here. And this is where the kaput alliance name and mentality is born. But how kaput were you feeling in this moment? Because, you know, there were still a few of you. There was still a real idol, a fake idol. Was the immediate reaction after Mark's vote out like, okay, we're just absolutely screwed?
It was a little bit like that. Yes, they were such a tight unit, and it really was death to all returnees was the chant that was kind of going through the tribe. So yes, I felt very, very kaput. I also, you know, I knew that Simon or Brooke would always have this necklace, which means I'm always going to be the split. But even as this, you know, I'm the split until you can no longer split, and then it's me. And the split is still very dangerous because you never know what's going to happen. So I was worried. I really was. It sucked losing Mark. I was glad he was on the jury. That was about it. But everything else sucked.
Well, you get to work and then some. You tell Brooke about this real idol. You tell her about the fake idol. And you do a little bit of arts and crafts the next day. I need to know what
So
this
much fun.
process was like. Was it just you just walked off into the middle of the jungle and disappeared for hours on end while you tried to hammer a chain with
I
the back
wish.
of the ladle?
I really wish that I had hours to craft this thing. No, I probably had like 3 minutes, 5 minutes max. There is no time out there, and we're still actually a really big tribe. So all of these people are out in the jungle. I saw Caleb in the jungle. He was always looking for idols, and I'm there pulling staples off the side of the well, trying to hammer this this chain in. And I'm thinking, oh my gosh, if I get busted, I'm screwed. Like I'm literally crafting a fake idol right now. If anyone sees, it's not good. So not a lot of time. That was a quick craft class.
Now, I'm curious, did you tell Simon about the fake as well?
Yeah, I did.
Okay, great. Then
Yeah,
now this will inform a little bit about that tribal council then.
yeah, no, look, so Simon knew about the fake. He had not seen it. He didn't know what it looked like, but I had said, I've got a very good looking fake idol. And then he knew about my real idol. He did not know that it was going to get played that night. You know, that's a surprise for Simon.
So, going into this vote, we get a little bit of intrigue where, you know, you and Brooke are trying to work on Caleb, you're trying to work on Cameron. They're both like, yeah, we'll vote for Ben. But obviously, you end up turning to a much more epic plan later on. Did you ever think that these guys were actually going to flip, or were you think they were just like flapping their lips to keep you occupied during that day?
I am an optimist, Mike. And so, yes, I wanted to believe them. I thought this could be really good if Cameron and Caleb are on our side to vote out Ben. We had done a lot of like psychological warfare that day. And the night before, trying to plant that, you know, Ben wasn't happy that Caleb is taking all the limelight for Mark's vote, and you know who's actually claiming this vote, and blah blah blah. They were all really interested in that, so we really poured fuel on that type of conversation. And so I thought, yeah, maybe they will get on board. You know, Cameron wanted to be a big player too, and I knew he wanted a big move, so this could be like a big move for Cameron, and we would try and play into that side of people's egos. But when we walked into tribal, I pulled Brooke aside straight away. It's not in the edit, but I was like, we're doing the idols tonight. And she was like, absolutely. So it was on from there.
Yeah, so let's walk through the process of one of the most iconic tribal councils in Australian Survivor history. So was the plan, because you and I spoke about this a little bit in your exit interview, that like this was not necessarily like, okay, first you do this, then I do this. It was more so improvisational theater, if anything.
Was, yeah.
So, but were you always going to give Brooke the fake to put on first, or was it just so happened to be the one that she got her hands on first?
I was always giving Brooke the fake, always. I'm not giving up my idol. Without, like, I will be the keeper of my idol and decide how the real idol gets played in the end. Because I knew if I give my real idol to Brooke, she's going to play it on herself. Like, I've just handed over all my power. So no, Brooke is getting the fake. I'm going to keep the real one for now. But yeah, it was pretty intuitive. Brooke did so well to play up that idol. I mean, I saw her in the bluffing challenge with the lemon pie, and I knew this is my girl for this. She was perfect.
Yeah, she's having everyone feeling sour as she tries to play this off as a real idol. And so people go off, they whisper. And again, I talked about this on the podcast, but I love so much about your move specifically is that it seemed like everyone sat down and they had a new plan, and then you pull out your idol, and then that causes them to shuffle the deck again. So talk to me a bit about that timing. What was sort of the lull you were waiting for before you decided to pull out your idol too?
It was exactly that. You know, they've now got their new plan. You know, they've shifted the votes or whatever they might have done. I also, like, I had a few whispers and could hear that they thought it was a fake idol. But I thought, okay, it's probably on me. And as David is kind of wrapping up tribal council and saying, we'll go and vote, it's also raining. Like, nobody wants to be there. But me and Brooke, we want to be here. Like, I'm happy to stay here for as long as we have to get this right. And by right, I mean the two of us going back to the beach. So I think I'm going to pull out my idol and let's make these guys really think, because when you look at the past few votes as well, they've really struggled with getting their splits correct. And, you know, they were constantly kind of fooled by us. And I thought this might be the one where they put in a contingency plan. And luckily, Ben did put in that contingency plan because, I mean, I'm so grateful. Fooled you again, guys. Gotcha at an 8-2. But yeah, I don't know what would have happened if I didn't pull that out. I actually think maybe one of us would have still gone home.
Did you get the sense as people get up and whisper again that, like, you had actually done it? Did you know the votes were going on to Blanche at all?
No, I didn't know it was going on to Blanche. I thought, if anything, Caleb and Cameron might jump on the tail end of the Ben vote. And I also thought maybe Simon was still with us because, you know, we're still talking to Simon during the tribal council as well because he's kind of left out. He's, you know, on the bottom of Ben and Jackson's alliance. He's kind of, you know, roped in last minute. But I thought people know we're interested in Ben. Maybe they'll jump on board. You know, they'll switch sides. They didn't. But thankfully, Ben put in his own contingency plan to save himself. Very smart.
And save you in the process, too.
Save me in the process.
So, again, we talked about this, but I need to just hash through your thinking again, because to say this took nerves of steel would be an understatement. As you mentioned, you knew that there was going to be some sort of split on you, most likely. So at what point in this evening did you say, I'm playing the idol for Brooke? Was it right there when you were standing in front of David? Was it while you were voting before that?
No, it was right there in front of David. It was all very quick. I remember looking at that urn and I just, like, my gut told me that there is definitely a few Keeley votes in there, but there is just not enough to send me home. I really thought we'd done enough to scuttle them that night and that votes were going elsewhere. I didn't know who it was. I was hoping it was Ben, but I wasn't sure. And in that moment, I just said to Brooke, you play yours for me and I'll play mine for you. And yeah, walked up to David and played it for Brooke. And David's mind is probably imploding at this time. But yeah. it all worked out in the end.
Well,
Worst case scenario was I was going to the villa. I mean,
that's true. Well, how much was your own mind imploding when this ended up happening? I mean, the two of you, the hug and exultation you showed, I think you were able to show the joy all over your face. But like, what was your reaction to this actually working?
oh, it was great. I mean, even actually, when I handed over the idol to David, I turned around and looked at them all, and they're all like, oh my God. Like, they couldn't believe that I've played it for Brooke, because I think they all thought I would chicken out and play it for myself. And they're all kind of looking like, oh my goodness, who is going home now? Like, we don't actually know, because they've all dumped on Brooke, as I suspected. But then also to watch their faces react to the fake idol, and once it's revealed that it is totally fake, was just priceless. But Brooke and I, to be honest, I didn't even know who had gone home until we're kind of packing up, until Blanche walks over there. I'm like, oh my God, it's Blanche. That is insane. Like, what happened in this whole vote? Because it was like a bomb had gone off, and like, there's just that ringing in your ears. I was shocked.
Well, because really you had also expected one more person on your side. Simon ends up voting Brooke here. So I need your reaction to this, because it seems like he's aware of your idols, right? It seems like he's involved in this Ben plan. So were you surprised by what he did? And we get a little bit of taste as to your reaction the next day, but what were you feeling back at camp about it?
It's not surprising. Like, I think even Simon's looking at Brooke and I being like, I know one's a fake. I know one's real. I think even Simon thought I would play the real idol on myself. I remember in that tribal council, Simon asked me, he was like, hey, do you mind, like, can I just put a vote on you tonight to show like my alliance to these guys? And I was like, I'd rather you don't. I'd rather you don't do that. So I think even he was like, I've got to get off this sinking ship. And make other plans. So I get it, but I was like, damn it, Simon. A 3-3 on Blanche and Ben would have been a real cherry on top of this whole situation.
How did that change your relationship with him? Because it's, as you said, he seemed like Final Three material to you. Did you ever really trust him again after that?
I mean, I never really trusted anyone fully out there. I was pretty suspicious at all times, but I still wanted to work with Simon. He didn't write my name down either. I knew that at some point I would need to get rid of Brooke, and I was happy to get rid of Brooke before Simon as well. So I was willing to still work with him despite his wimpy ways.
All right. Well, you luckily take a little bit of a step back after being in the limelight, it seems, during this Ben vote. And this is where Simon's able to come through, perhaps showcase his loyalty again, by doing yet another improbable thing and swinging Jackson over. So this is, you had had people tell you had people tell you before, like, I'm flipping, and it ends up not happening. So what was your expectation that Jackson was actually going to do this? And then what was your reaction when it ended up happening?
Look, all three of us had worked really hard on Jackson, Caleb, and Cameron. So I thought, they were our potential cracks. That's who we were targeting. But in tribal council, I was like, Brooke's going home. I'm the split again, and Brooke is going home. It was right as David says, okay, it's time to vote, that Ben whispers, mouths Ben to us. And I was like, oh my gosh, we are on. Like, we're back. We are saved. He's our savior. And I was shocked that he actually did go up there and do it in the end as well. He could have said it, doesn't mean he does it. And I couldn't believe it. Simon, obviously I didn't know all the ins and outs of that conversation, but Simon's use of the wrestling idea was a really good one. Really good one.
Talk to me more about your dynamic with Ben, because again, from our perspective, this was a guy that came absolutely out of nowhere as this massive character. And Ben did tell me, right, there was a little bit maybe from a medical perspective that he had these mouth sores, that had a difficult time talking early on. But what was your relationship like? Were you as surprised by sort of the form he takes on by the time he's voted out?
Yep, I was. I renamed him. As we know, Ben has like multiple personalities. Yes. He is known legally as Ben, but then he has this other persona of Davo.
Right.
And I had started calling him Randall, like that creepy little orange purple character of Monsters Inc. He was really scary. Like he'd come out at night and scare you. That was Ben in that moment for me. And I tell him that to his face out there. Ben and I slept next to each other in the shelter. We were like two little kids. Sometimes when I come back from tribal council, I just wanted to party. I wanted an tribal after party. And Ben was down for it. So we would just giggle like idiots. But we were also coming for each other. And there were times where I said to Ben, I was like, can we just be friends? Like, can we play this game together and let's get rid of a few other, passengers, and then we'll battle it out later. I was like, we love each other's company. But he would also walk around being like, you're toast. Do we get rid of the challenge beast or do we get rid of the strategist? And he was scary. He went full Mad King mode in that part of the game.
Well, let's talk about the Kingslayer then in the form of Jackson here, because you mentioned how you tried to make a little bit of a relationship with him in the beginning of the merge, and this is somebody who you'll be technically working with up until you get voted out. So what was your dynamic like once he ends up apparently flipping over and really starting to work with you all throughout the next bit of the game?
Yeah, I mean, look, I really like Jackson. I could tell that he was far closer to Brooke, though, than he was me. So I still really needed Simon. Simon was probably like my best ally. And I still was keeping in touch with the other side as much as I could. I still want to work with Sally. Caleb, if possible, Cameron, if possible, as well. I mean, I would tell Cameron where I was voting every single time. I'm like, get on board, Cam, get on board. We can be a team. And he never did. So I was still trying with the other side.
Well, to that point, I want to get into Laws's pitch for the Redback Alliance.
Yeah,
was this something you were actually, whet your appetite at all? Did you think this was real or just something Laws was trying to do to make sure this deadlock vote didn't happen?
Yeah, I love a women's alliance. The Three Wise Women was great. Like it never could be fully formed, the Three Wise Women, because Faith and Sally just didn't really trust each other. But I love playing with Brooke. She's amazing. So I'm down for an all women's alliance. The issue is, though, is Loz pitches this to me after she's got a history. I kind of look at the evidence in people's history. She's got a history of voting off Arsha, Lottie. She's also been writing down my name and Brooke's name for the last couple of votes. And now all of a sudden she wants an all women's alliance. But the only way that this alliance can take form is if I vote out Simon. And I'm like, Loz, let's, I'm willing, like I am actually willing, but you're going to have to give up Cameron or Caleb for me in this moment. I can't trust you. You've been writing. She was the one who was writing my name down too. I was like, I can't really get there with you. And it just felt like something out of convenience and not something that was true or where she really wanted to go. She does continue trying, but at the same time continues to write down either mine or Brooke's name. So, I just couldn't trust it.
For what it's worth, that night she writes down Simon's. Were you surprised by that? Because Simon was resolute in thinking that you were the vote, because that's what Cameron told him. Did you believe that would be the case going to Tribal Council?
Yep, I did. I thought, so Cameron had like this grand master plan. He was telling him about it. He's like, Keeley, I want to work with you. That's why we're putting your name in the urn. Like, we're keeping you safe tonight. And I'm like, no, Cam, you don't know my alliance. They're just going to vote me out. I was like, no matter whatever one of us is in the urn on that side, we're just going to vote that person out. I already know, like, Brooke will write my name down, or Simon would write my name down, I'm sure, as well. So, yeah, I was not surprised that they put it on Simon in the end, but it just didn't make a lot of sense. It was a really bizarre tribal council. Cameron's plan, I couldn't understand it. I don't think anyone could understand Cameron's plan that night.
Well, to be fair, you do use that logic when you whisper, like, okay, let's vote for Laws because we want to keep her around. We could say that, hey, we want to purposely keep you safe from the deadlock. So talk to me a bit more about that decision.
And that is true, because I'm kind of like, let's write down Loz because maybe she will work with us in the future. That's possible. But also if Loz goes home, great. Like, that's also great because, you know, while she's trying to work with us, it doesn't feel super genuine, but it could be a good way that we can say, you know, we're interested in the Women's Alliance. That's why we saved you, to make sure more men were up for the vote or whatever. But yeah, look, I mean, it was Simon in the end. That sucked.
Yeah, I mean, as you
They were
mentioned,
so keen for it.
well, how surprised were you by that? Because as you mentioned, it seemed like you had said whether it was your name or Simon's name that somebody in your alliance would have flipped. So were you surprised that Brooke ultimately did what she did?
No, not at all. I can see it from her perspective. I can see it from like Simon's and my own perspective as well. It makes sense for Brooke to take out Simon. It's also a really good way to signal to the other side that Brooke's like willing to work with them over going to a rock situation. But yeah, no huge surprise. It still sucked though. I felt like we just kind of got back to an even playing field, and you know, now it really is back into the powerless minority. Often we were a very powerful minority, or that's how I'd been playing a lot of my game. So that kind of sucked, but not surprising.
Well, the good news is that majority is about to give away power in this very next vote. So it's interesting that you talk about, you know, you being so honest with Cameron, because maybe that pays off in a major way as he takes you on the reward. Now, the two of you were promising each other throughout the challenge, like, hey, I'll win if I take, if I win, I'll take you. But what was your reaction when he actually did take you to that IKEA overnight reward?
I was like, Cameron, what are you doing? This is so stupid. I was also thinking, Cameron, are you trying to torture me? Because Cameron drove me insane. We would call him Radio Cameron. He had one volume level and it was loud, and I was into sleep maxing. Like, I was maximizing my sleep at all costs, and he would be, you know, interrupting that. So I thought, is he taking me here so that I get no sleep and just go more and more crazy in this game? I couldn't believe it, but I was so happy. I'd been packing my bag for days thinking surely an overnight reward was coming, but to be selected to go on it was amazing. The high tea and the IKEA overnight reward, best rewards in the whole game.
I was going to say, thank God Cameron forgot that you were on that high tea reward.
Yeah, exactly. Silly.
So at this reward, you know, as Cameron was trying to pitch to you, like, okay, let's go for Brooke, let's go for Jackson. You seem amenable to it. Brooke is also talking privately about, like, I need to figure out when I go for Keeley. So what was the sense of your relationship? Because the two of you obviously seemed thick as thieves, but was there this understanding even at this point of, like, we cannot take each other to the end, all things considered?
Yeah, there is a bit of that feeling there. We can't take each other to the end. I'd love to, but Brooke is like absolutely adored, and she actually has the capability of winning challenges as well. And, you know, Mark's told me about the peg challenge from his season. Brooke on pegs, I think she would do so well.
I think she'd still be out there.
She's still out there right now. Yeah, exactly. So I know that I'd really struggle against Brooke. I know that she is coming for me. I've heard it from other people already. I still don't really want to get rid of her just yet, but yeah, I know that it's kind of ending. And yeah, for me, I think it was also a hope that maybe the other people would be willing to use me as just a number in their votes, and they could do whatever they want. They could do some things for themselves, and I could just ride through on the coattails.
Well, luckily, finally, you will not be a name involved in a split here because you win your first immunity challenge. Talk to me about this. Did this surprise you at all?
Yeah, it surprised me. I think it surprised absolutely everyone. Everyone watching was probably
you beat Brooke in an endurance challenge.
I know. Isn't that so amazing? I couldn't believe it. I almost still don't believe that it happened as well. It was just it was very similar to when I played the Idol for Brooke, like a similar kind of feeling where there's almost like this halo around your vision, and all I can remember from the challenge is the black ball and Cameron chirping away, obviously. But it was just like that black ball. I can just see it so clearly. And I could have sat there for so much longer as well. I was really comfortable.
Wow. So
Mm.
you are safe. And what is so intriguing to me is that the previously on for the next episode is like, and Jackson and Brooke are left in the dark as everyone votes for Cameron. So it is interesting they leave your name out. Were you actively involved in this plan, to your earlier point, alongside other people for the Cameron blindside, or were you just more so told about it?
I was so in for the Cameron Blindside. If they played some of my confessionals from the IKEA reward, I sat there and I was like, I hope Cameron enjoys his last meal because I can't wait to vote him out of this game. I thought this was perfect. And I'd even spoken to Sally at that reward about voting out Cameron. And no surprise here, there was obviously another alliance name that didn't make the air. Myself, Cameron, and Sally, we'd called ourselves like the Scrubs Alliance. And Cameron was like, if we say Scrubs at Tribal Council, like we're going on Brooke or something like that. And I was like, yeah, perfect. But then I said to Sally, if I say Scrubs at Tribal Council, we're going on Cameron. Like that's the real plan. I was like, it was
Use
like
his own plan against him.
pretty much. I was like, we're going on Cameron. And I do actually use it at Tribal Council, but they blank it out. And funnily enough, again, Cameron was just playing silly games, but he wasn't very good at covering his tracks. Cameron told Brooke that if she hears me say the word Scrubs, it means I'm coming for her. And it was so like Inception-like at that Tribal Council, even though Cameron was going home. But Brooke at one point says in that Tribal Council, and it is in the episode, that her best friend in one of her previous games voted her out at 6. I think it was 6 or 7. I can't remember. Yeah, and I was like, I heard it. I heard what she was saying. But I still went ahead with saying Scrubs anyway, for Cameron's benefit.
Absolutely wild. So as we move into the final 6 here, let's get into the round that does end up finally bidding adieu to Brooke. What's so fun is that the previous episode, you come back from the Simon Tribal Council and you say, like, I'm not working with any of them. I'd rather shit in my hands than clap than work with them. The beginning of next episode, you say, I'm open for working with anyone. So what caused this shift in mentality?
I mean, honestly, Mike, I'm open to work with anybody at any time throughout the entire game, except for maybe when Faith was in the game. You know, she was my number one. But otherwise, I am really open at all times. I'd rather shit in my hands and clap. I tried to be really good and not say those types of things, but I couldn't help myself. That one just kind of came out of me. There's a lot of things like that I wish I did say. But I think it was also, you know, I've also trusted Brooke. I also did not trust Brooke. She's so good, and she was keeping things from me. And not only that, I know that she was pushing my name with the other side of the tribe, and she was trying to make inroads with them as well. And like I said, Brooke's social strategic game is very impressive. She really can convince people to do things that they wouldn't normally do. And so she was a huge threat. And I guess it's ultimately why Brooke gets voted off in the end. Well, if I did not win the necklace, I think it was me.
Oh, interesting. You thought even if you or Brooke did not win, that you would have gone over Brooke.
Yeah.
Wow. Why?
Yeah. Because Brooke would join the other side to get rid of me.
Interesting. Okay, so it would have been a contest more so of like who votes out the other one first.
It's not even like that. I don't think it was like a get me before I get you situation. I think it was more of a like demonstrating to the other side, like, let's work together. Because for both Brooke and I, you know, I looked at the other side and I'm like, I'll sit next to any one of you except Brooke. And I think Brooke was like, I'll sit next to any one of you except Keeley. And so we're both trying to hammer the other side with, let's play together in this last part of the game. And I'll show you that I'm serious about it by voting off my number one ally in Keeley or in Brooke. So I think we're both playing a very similar game at this point.
What sort of inroads were you making with the other side? We see a conversation between you and Caleb where you're like, wouldn't it be fun if we had these things where we started together and we diverged and then we came back together? You had spoken about your relationship with Sally. What were some of those dynamics you felt you were still kind of nursing despite voting on the opposite side of some of these people?
Yeah, it was. It was Caleb and Sally. They were my key people, and Jackson, but I knew Jackson was, he was pretty sold on Brooke over myself. So those were the two people that I was targeting. Loz, I never really targeted. I couldn't connect with her strategically. She never seemed committed to anything. And I also knew that her and Caleb were so tight. Which infuriated me at times. I was like, I need to break them up so that Caleb is more free to play. But yeah, I was pushing more with Sally. Sally, then Caleb, then Jackson, Loz. Yeah.
This is the second immunity challenge that you are going to win. From your perspective, sounds like it was necessary. Was there a sort of strategy that you had in this particular challenge besides, I guess, slow and steady wins the race?
Yeah, slow and steady wins the race, right? I didn't drop a single block.
Really?
Nope, I made no mistakes in that entire challenge. It was one clean sweep, which again is so shocking. But the same kind of thing happened. It was just like another halo effect. I don't know what that is, but I need to be able to tap into it more often because I was just so focused on it, and I couldn't even hear the other people and what was going on for them. It was like it was actually an easier challenge for me. They're good Keeley challenges. Anything sitting is great, and anything like the block related was awesome too.
Well, those seem like easy challenges for you. A much harder challenge is voting out Brooke here. It seems like you're very emotionally conflicted. And I think a lot of people at the time were saying, listen, you are safe. If you want to force a rock draw, your game is not in danger whatsoever. How much did you genuinely consider that? Considering that, as you mentioned before, there was this idea from your perspective of like, Brooke is coming for me. She doesn't want to sit at the end with me.
Yeah. I thought about rocks. We probably would have ended up there. Maybe. Actually, I think the other side would have crumbled.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, are you really going to leave your fate up to a rock? I wouldn't. I would prefer to like signal to other people that I am working with them and vote Brooke off, then force a rocks and kind of signal that I'm not working with you at all. I find rocks to be such a definitive way to really say no to potential alliances forming or, dynamics changing in the game. It's just so firm. So I don't like using rocks as like a strategic move.
So throughout this afternoon, Sally is starting to figure out what she wants to do with her big move. Now, she has this half idol, and she sort of involves you in this plan where she's like, I'm going to tell Brooke that I need to get Caleb's half idol, but only if she gives me her half idol. You call it, in a very generous use of the word, unusual. But what was your take on this? Did you have a sense as like where things actually were based on what Sally was saying and wasn't saying?
Yeah, I thought that was a very unusual thing to do. It made no sense to me at all. Why I'm like, and Brooke of all people, she's not going to give you this half idol. Like, she doesn't trust you at all, Sally. And what's even weirder is that you're putting up Caleb's name. None of it made any sense to me. I don't know. That was so strange. And I actually spoke to Caleb about it. And I was kind of like, if I was you, that would really concern me that my ally is using me as a decoy vote and saying it right to my face. And especially when there is a potential idol in play here as well. I was like, that really concerns me. I don't know how you're feeling about that, but, let Sally do whatever Sally wants to do. If she can get a hold of this half idol, I mean, kudos to her.
Well, kudos to you, because you do get the half idol from Brooke. And we see this moment on the beach, and Brooke has told me that, you told her in those moments, like, yes, I'm voting for you.
Yeah.
Was it a hard time to convince her to basically leave the half idol for you, or was she always going to do it?
I wasn't sure if Brooke would do it. I mean, I'm literally standing there saying I'm going to vote you out tonight, but also can you leave me the half idol?
Yeah, that's getting a lot.
I mean, I don't even know how I would respond in that moment. I also like, I don't know, the game is so bizarre. I felt like I also had to say goodbye to Brooke. I wasn't able to sit there and tell her like, no, I'm not going to vote for you and then vote for her. Like that just felt so sheepish. I would rather just say it to her. And I kind of knew that she had run out of, tricks in her bag of tricks. But I am surprised that she left it for me. She told me kind of towards the end of Tribal Council that she'd left it in her track pants. And yeah, I thought, wow, thanks, Brooke. It was so sad. It's a hard. That's actually the hardest episode for me to watch.
Yeah, you seem really emotionally fraught just with the idea of turning on her, which again, it seemed like from a strategic perspective you felt was inevitable, but I imagine there's a difference between the heart versus the head, right? The gamey side of this is necessary versus I have had so much emotional investment in this person. We played idols on each other. We were put together.
Yeah.
We were together from the very beginning, and now you actually have to go through with doing this.
Yeah, exactly. And, again, just like Faith was, like, Brooke has a wicked sense of humor. And we'd sit in the shelter just kind of watching everyone and giggling away in the mornings. And I knew that the next morning I wouldn't have that. It would just be me. So it was hard. It was really hard voting out Brooke. I'm glad that a lot of my allies were actually taken from me. It's easier. It's a lot easier. Yeah.
Well, you will soon be taken from us. We need to get into everything in this final 5 episode because surprisingly, it's far from straightforward, despite the fact that you probably seem like dead woman walking. If I don't win, I'm gone. So you get approached by Laws to say, all right, I'm making my move. It's Caleb. How much did you actually believe this at the time?
I mean, I don't. Like, Loz approaches me with these plans every Tribal Council. So I'm kind of like, that sounds like a really good plan. Now, it actually is a very good plan in terms of when I put Loz's shoes on and look around. I think that is a very good move for you to make and one that you probably should make. At the same time, I also know, you guys are silly not to vote me out as well. That also makes sense. But I do think that I am not a huge challenge threat. I know I've won 2 necklaces, but they do feel like a bit of a fluke. And I think even other people are like, this is surely a fluke. Whereas Caleb, he's super scrappy. I would think he would be actually pretty good in challenges. And so I think Loz should have made that move. But yeah, when she pitches it, I'm like, yeah, unlikely, Loz.
Well,
here's another one.
Well, you and Jackson end up voting for Laws. And you say in the beginning of the episode it's because you felt that she was the linchpin between Caleb and Sally. Almost like, I guess, that faith in the head office situation. Talk to me a bit more about that, because obviously we didn't see a lot of Laws's game. What was your sense of her position there?
Yeah, I looked at Loz like she was an additional vote to Sally or Caleb's game. Whoever was in there closer with her, which Caleb had told me he would never write down Loz's name. And so I assumed that they were closer than Loz and Sally. For me, yeah, when I looked at it, I just thought Loz is an additional vote for however they want to vote going into a Tribal Council. And if I could get rid of Loz, then I think those 2 would be more free agents. They would only have a single vote. They would be more open to working with other people. That was my view.
All right, so you try to make an appeal to Sally here, and you talk about the fact that, you get a sense, and you spoke about this in my interview too, that you got a sense that these passengers, newbies, they were more emotional players, perhaps. Talk to me a bit more about that. How did you adjust your strategies and pitches to appeal more to that emotional side as you try to do with Sally here?
Yeah, I mean, I guess like I have to change the narrative a little bit to be one that is super heartfelt. I do also mean it as well. Wouldn't that be incredible? The 3 Redemption Beach people are the final 3. Is that not a great ending to the season? I think it is. But not only that, like I really had spent every day with Sally and we do genuinely get along very well. And so I think it would be lovely sitting with Sally at the end. not only that, like I think I could win against anyone left on the beach, so I'll sit next to anyone. But I know that Sally is a sentimental person, so I am going to approach her with more sentiment over real strategy. Yeah.
So there's this weird misconnections moment in the jungle where, she's saying, "Do you have the half idol?" And you're like, "I wish I did." And Sally's like, "Yeah, me too." When both of you actually do have the half idols. I mean,
Yeah.
were you able to ferret anything out from her before that tribal council that she actually had the half idol, or did you both go to tribal not thinking that either one of you had anything?
Look, I don't know how to say this. I thought Sally had it. Caleb had actually mentioned something to me. He said that he had given it to Sally. And so I thought maybe Sally has it, but maybe she doesn't. I don't know where the half idol was actually at this point. So yeah, I mean, we are kind of dancing around each other, but she's not really giving anything up. So neither was I. I thought it's either with Caleb or Sally. That's where I was at.
So then how surprised were you when Sally comes up to you at tribal council and says that you haven't? I mean, this is sort of any port in a storm. I imagine you're willing to go through with it, but what was your initial reaction?
Yeah, I was like, I really needed that half idol. When I saw it, I was, trying to use like my mind powers to just get it out of her hands and into mine. But I did think, ooh, okay, it is good that Sally has it because I could try and work with Sally. I've been trying to work with Sally, which is why I kind of pursue that avenue on my deathbed. I mean, I know I'm going home. I have my hair out and I've got it crimped and lovely for the evening. But I did see that half idol and think, oh, this could be a real opportunity here.
Now,
Yeah.
I need a rules clarification here because I asked Sally, it's something that we had talked about on the podcast, like, why not? She has the two halves of the idol. Why not like play it on laws if she really wants to get rid of you? So Sally said from her perspective that the rules she was given was that apparently you and her both had to agree on who to use the idol on. Is that true or not?
That is true if we were playing it together. But just like what we saw with Sally trying to get it off Brooke, once you are given the other half of the idol, you are in full power of the idol. So if I had, and I thought about going up with her and like playing it together, but at the same time, when I spoke to Sally, I was like, this is a really big move for you to make as part of like your story. So for me, it was more about giving it to Sally and letting Sally take that whole moment for herself so that if she gets to the end, she does have something to talk about. Obviously, if I'm sitting there with her, I'm going to spin that story in a way that benefits me. But yeah, my thought was I'm going to give the half to Sally and let her play it how she said that she's going to play it, which is for me. And yeah, if it's not for me, play it however you want, Sal. That's what I would be doing. And I would have played it for somebody else as well.
Yeah. Well, what she does is give a nice memento to you on the way out. And obviously, you are a little emotional towards it in your exit. I mean, I think a lot of us in the moment from an outside perspective thought it was like kicking you while you're down, rubbing salt in the wound, whatever way you want to put it. Did you perceive it that as well, that you felt like she was stringing you along and yanked the ladder at the last second?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. Especially if you think it has to be played like unanimously, that's even worse because you've just kind of done all of this and then like thrown it back in my face. And if it was unanimous, that's even worse. But it wasn't. I mean, you could play it however you wanted once it's given to you. But yes, I was not super stoked with how it all unfolded. If you want to get rid of me, just get rid of me. Didn't need all the theater around it. Yeah.
Well, how was the theater perceived by the jury? Because Sally will talk about the next episode like this was my move. I made my big player gesture. But the sense you got from going to Jury Villa, did you feel like people were not happy with it? Did they like the theatrics of it?
I think we saw their responses in the actual episode. Right. And I think that carried onwards. And it probably didn't help that I was also like, that was really bad jury management. I'm now going to the jury. I've got great friends on the jury, and that was just a really weird move to make at the end, and for it to not get played as well. I would have loved, I mean, again, she could have played it for Loz. The idol was hers now. I wasn't up there trying to play it with her. It was all hers. And that would have shown a really good read on the game, because Sally knew where the votes were going. They were going on Loz. It still would have sucked. Like, I was still getting voted out, but at least it was a far more strategic move. Like, I could see Sally's voting me out, big threat, but she is creating like a debt in Loz by playing the idol for her and hopefully securing Loz with her over Caleb or Jackson. So I don't think anyone was super impressed.
Who were you rooting for by the time you leave the game? We'll talk about going to Final Tribal Council in a little bit, but as you're voted out, you're going back into Jury Villa, you're acclimating back to society, becoming a person. Of the final four, like, who is your biggest rooting interest left in the game?
For me, it's Caleb's game to lose.
Wow.
Yep. When I leave, it's Caleb's game to lose. It's interesting. So at my vote at 5, I'm looking at it. I know I'm going home. I'm like, it's really hard for anyone to kind of claim my vote off at this point. Like, I feel like nobody can say that they voted me out, except for maybe Caleb. Like, Caleb has convinced Sally and Loz to vote me out, even though it's probably not in their best interest. They really should do something whilst they still can. And I think at 5, you could still change the game and not do the predictable Keeley vote. So for me, when I left, Caleb, it was Caleb's game to lose. I expected to see Jackson next and see Caleb win the game.
Well, we'll see Jackson and Caleb face off against each other. You're the first person I'm talking to about this, so I need your reaction in the moment to this final 3 vote. I mean, you were one of the many shocked faces. What was going through your head at this time?
Yeah, I was really shocked. I feel like I'm the person who doesn't react the most on the jury, but I really am like jaw drop moment. I am Cameron, but just on the outside, I'm like, wow, that's crazy. In Jury Villa, we're fantasizing over a Jackson Caleb endgame. Like, we are all like, oh, in another life, it's never going to happen. Whoever wins, the immunity necklace is taking Loz to the end. That just makes sense to all of us. So I was totally shocked. But I also thought, what another good move by Caleb, because Loz is a vote for Caleb. Jackson and him, the rivalry was real. Was it exaggerated at times? Maybe. But it was real. Like, I don't know if Jackson would vote for Caleb. Why would you put Jackson on the jury? I think better odds putting Loz on the jury. So it was another good move.
Did your jury vote ever get swayed at all? It sounds like you thought it was Caleb's to lose from the moment you got voted out, but nothing at Final Tribal Council could have moved you in the Jackson direction?
No. I had such a good, clear view of Caleb's game, and there's some things that haven't made the episodes as well. Caleb was throwing the beans and rice out in the middle of the night, trying to starve us so that we couldn't win challenges. Obviously, it never worked because we were still winning the challenges, not Caleb. But I like that kind of stuff, Mike. I love when people are doing things a little bit naughty and mischievous, and Caleb was doing a little bit of that. And so, that kind of gets my vote. But I'd watched him do the double agent thing since Baron. So I kind of had a good, clear view of his game. And I think the way that he played the end game is really impressive. He convinces Loz to let him go to fire against Sally. He then takes Loz out, putting her on the bench for another vote for him. Like, he's putting people on the bench who are going to vote for him. And that's really smart. I don't know if Caleb thought that in the time. Right. It was a very lumpy, bumpy tribal pitch. I know in the episode you see Mark and Loz really advocating for him. I know I advocated for him at times as well. But yeah, he played a good game. It was like a weird sweet spot game that he was playing. Yeah.
Given that, did you get the feeling like no matter, like, expanding, I guess, my last question outwards, did you feel like everyone in the jury's votes were locked in? Or did you feel like things had gotten swayed at Final Tribal Council?
No, I think people were pretty locked in. Injury Villa, we don't tell each other who we're voting for. You know, it is kind of like a scramble before Tribal Council. We're not sitting there being like, I'm voting for Caleb. However, you know, I knew that Blanche was guaranteed Caleb. I knew that Cameron was guaranteed Caleb. I knew about Cameron not loving Jackson and wanting him out for a really long time, but I also knew that Cameron really liked Caleb's game. I knew Mark was going for Caleb, Sally and Loz. I mean, again, it was like obvious. I knew where it was going. Brooke, I wasn't sure what Brooke would do, but Jackson's not super surprising. They were so close.
Wow.
You didn't see a lot of that in the episodes, but they were so close. I think Simon would have had a really clear view of Jackson's game as well, because Simon has watched Jackson, you know, grow up from Bounty all the way through to the end. So for Simon, it would be a different perspective to mine. And Ben and Jackson were like ride or die besties out there. So that makes sense. I think we were all pretty convinced on our votes going in.
Well, when you left Samoa with these votes in mind, what was your own perception of your game? And did that change at all once you were able to watch it all back over the past 8 weeks?
Yep, it changed.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Again, like in the moment, I don't realize like how great some things are. And I just think a lot of the time, Mike, I felt really blind out there, and I was just kind of doing things because I felt like I needed to do things because nothing changes if nothing changes. So I was willing to kind of push the game in a way to break it a little bit and see if we could go in a different direction, because it was so like newbie versus returnee at times, or, you know, even the Don blindside. I was like, if I just roll over and let Mark have this one again, nothing changes. Like I wanted to kind of change and break the game. So I wasn't sure how that would translate on TV. And I didn't think if I was really that big in any of the plays, if that makes sense. Like I get the idol thing. But even then I was like, yeah, it was great. But like, I'm sure great things have happened on Survivor before. So I waited until the TV show came out before I would make my decision on whether I did good or not. And, you know, they send families out to Samoa at Final Four. So my brother got the phone call saying like, Keeley's, you know, she's really close.
Get the grandmother lie ready.
Correct. Yeah. Like, and they're like, can you start packing? And my brother is like, Keeley is the goat dragged to the end of the game.
He has so much confidence in you from the beginning of your Survivor journey to the end. This loser can't make it on the show versus, oh, she's probably not going to get any votes.
Yeah. And so like, I really have this like drilled into me a little bit. And obviously Brooke and Simon and Mark are like, no, Keeley, like you're a great player. Like, don't be silly. And I'm like, yeah, like, I think I did okay. But a lot of the time I felt like I really had no idea what was going on. And, you know, watching the TV show back was really nice because I was like, damn, this is exactly how I remember it. This is insane. So that was a really nice moment to have that. And when you're watching the TV show, it's like nothing can hurt you in a way. So you can actually feel the emotions of that time in the game, but at least you can feel them like in the safety of your own home. So that was really interesting. So like I really felt the Don blindside. Like I really felt finding the motif and like cracking it off and creating that and finding my real idol, playing that idol, winning the immunity necklaces. Like I really could feel a lot of the feelings that I had not allowed myself to feel in the game.
That is so beautifully expressed and like surprising and not at the same time. I talk with so many players who say that essentially you go through Survivor twice. The first time is actually playing it, and the second time is watching it back. And granted, you are watching it back through a filter, but I do think from a certain perspective, it is a little bit more objective, and it allows you to then sort of release the freedom of like keeping your head in the game and being able to emotionally immerse yourself back in. I'm so glad that it afforded you the opportunity to have that freedom to express yourself. Because again, you know, it felt like you were able to play this incredibly impressive strategic game. But as we saw with that Brooke vote, there's always going to be emotion involved. And so
There
I'm
is.
and so I'm
Yeah.
grateful you had the opportunity to be able to live in all the highs and lows that existed in that.
I did. And, like I wasn't a big Survivor fan. And now like I'm in love with Survivor, like totally infatuated by it. It was like the most incredible experience. But I also, I look at all the fans and like you as a podcaster as well. I think it's beautiful. It's really nice. It's a very weird family to be a part of. But I'm like totally infatuated by it. I think Survivor has my heart for the rest of my life, which is really nice. I hope it never breaks my heart. That would be devastating. But I've really enjoyed it. I've loved watching the fans. I love reading the comments, even the mean ones about me. I just laugh about them because I also knew my journey and where it was going.
Well, and considering your brothers have probably told you so much worse over your life, I think they've conditioned you for it.
They have. Yeah. I'm really, really well conditioned. The whole time watching it, my brother continued to say that wasn't great, or like taunt me over the things that was happening and blah, blah, blah. And, it was right before I win the immunity necklace. And he was like, the only way that I'll say that you're good is if you win a necklace. And I did, obviously. I mean, I knew I win 2 and I won it. And he's like, fluke. If you win 2, then I'll say you're good. And I was like, yes. And he finally admitted it. He was like, okay. He was like, you were very, very good out there. I guess you weren't the goat that was dragged to the end. I was like, thank you.
Well, so. I'm so happy you followed. Like, I've talked about this again and again. It's one of my favorite things about Australian Survivor is casting and people who are admittedly not fans of the show, and like having them fall in love with the game along the way. And it brings me so much joy to find out that you have absolutely fallen in love with Survivor. Are you ready to go on a second date, Keeley? A lot of people have said, oh, you are the most locked in returnee to go from a newbie into a returnee from this season. Would you want to do it again?
I am a big believer of second dates. I really am. I judge people on second impressions, second dates. I would love to play again, Mike, but at the same time, the thought of meeting 23 new people, that terrifies me. The game is hard, don't get me wrong, but the people is my biggest fear in playing another season of Survivor. But the short answer is yes.
What is the biggest thing you would change about your approach to the game between the first time and the second time?
It's so hard because I think it's really hard to change things about yourself. And I also think that you are molding yourself into the culture of the tribe, which is ultimately created by you and everybody else, but you kind of have to like find your place in there. So I don't know how much of my game I would change. I can see so much value in having, ride or die kind of allies, like having that one loyal person. I can also see value in being connected to nobody, kind of like how Caleb played a lot of his game as well until towards the end when he teams up with Loz. So I don't know. I think Survivor is actually quite an intuitive game. When I went into it, I didn't have a strategy at all. I just wanted to play with what I had access to. And so I think I'd approach another season in the same way. Sometimes I say I'd love to connect with people a little bit better, more emotionally. But I think doing that just opens your heart up to more heartbreak when they vote you out. So maybe I'd stay still like Killer Keeley in the next season.
I was like, you learn from Harry that sometimes those nicknames are kind of foisted upon you when you come in. You can be the most warm and loving person, like you're still Killer Keeley at the end of the day.
Yeah, exactly. I think I am too. I am actually quite warm and loving. Got some good friendships out of this, but going really deep with people, and then Survivor is a game where you're weaponizing personal relationships, and I don't love that. I'd prefer to keep it a little bit more closer to the surface so that we don't actually break each other's hearts in the process.
Well, the last thing I want to ask is something you and I actually spoke about before we came on here, before this whole 2-hour expedition, because we talked about like the opportunity for a first boot season, and you made the reference to a pork chop season. You're a Drag Race fan, Keeley. I need your credentials a little bit. Who are some of your favorite queens?
Okay, I love Silky Nutmeg Ganache because I just love saying that name. Like, is that not so much fun to say?
Crunch.
Yeah. Right? I love that. Miss Vanjie, I love that one. Candy Muse, who doesn't like Candy? I like a lot of the British queens. I loved the Vivian. That was really sad, but
Yeah.
what a beautiful season that was. Bag of Chips. I mean, these names are just incredible. These I would like drag queen alliance names in Survivor because they would be
Yes.
so creative.
Well,
Yeah.
especially in your season, it had like a billion alliance names. I think we need to bring some creative talents in there to really zhuzh these things up.
That's it. Creativity, uniqueness, nerve, and talent, baby.
Well, you had it all. Yeah,
Going.
listen, Keeley, in my opinion, you had it all. I think that you brought it to the runway, and
Yeah.
it just brings me so much. Like my heart soars getting the chance to talk with you here, because getting your opportunity to open up, to think through again some of the most convoluted high wire acts this game had to offer, but also be able to talk about some of these smaller moments, the relationships you built out through the highs and many lows and back to highs and back to lows. Like, it was a roller coaster to say the least, but I adored every second watching you, and I adored every second talking with you. Seriously, like it's such a wonderful personality that you brought to the game, and this time is no different. So obviously, I wish it was, $500,000 and a Soul Survivor title at the end of it, but you proved your brother wrong, and I think that's the most important takeaway out of all of this 40 plus days that you played.
Yeah, and you said I won the Chizzy title as well. So does that come with $500,000? Like, what's the go there?
I mean, it's the 500,000 hearts, maybe, as the equivalent. You won so many hearts. I mean, I guess really quick, the last thing I want to ask about is, like, you mentioned how, you read at least some of the comments, but I do think that you have received an incredible reception from fans. What's your reaction to that?
I'm overwhelmed by it. I love it. I actually posted on Reddit and said, like, it has been a pleasure to be judged by professionals this season. Keep it up, because honestly, like, they also make it for me as well. Like, reading some of their comments, even like the mean ones about me, is so funny. But I noticed in my like story arc, it was kind of like a trajectory of up. I don't think I was very well liked in the beginning, which is standard. I don't think I give off the best first impression, but over time, give it enough time, you will fall in love with me. And I don't think that ever changes. Once you're in love with me, it never changes. So hopefully fans for life.
Well, I can validate I am a fan for life, Keeley. I'm so excited to get the chance to talk with you, to break down everything from this incredible game. If people want to follow you on social media, if you want them to do so, where can they check you? Where can they check you out? Where can they leave comments?
Only on Instagram or LinkedIn, but please don't leave comments on my LinkedIn.
Unless you're looking for contract work.
Yeah, unless you need some help with some fraud, financial crime related matters, hit me up on LinkedIn. But Instagram is where I am, _so_ Keeley. I am not good at social media. Like, so follow me if you wish, but I can't promise it's going to be great. So yeah.
Well, you can promise that this was a great time, Keeley. Seriously.
It was.
So it's such an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming on. Thank you so much again as well for the incredibly kind words you've had towards this. It was a wild experience trying to make sense of all the wild stuff all of you were doing out there, but I cannot express not only how great of a time I had getting to cover it, but how great of a time I had watching you be able to navigate all of this chaos and sometimes perpetuate it as well. It was an absolute pleasure.
Thanks, Mike. I mean, it has also been really exciting for me watching all of these podcasts, watching yours as well. You have a very good read on the game, even things that never made it in the episode. You'd say things, I'm like, that's what was happening, Mike. Like, that's actually what was happening. This is insane that you're picking this up. So you should consider playing Survivor.
I would not want to subject anyone to that nightmare. Well, regardless, I'm going to be following up with talking with some people who did actually play Survivor alongside Keeley. We are just getting started with these deep dives, so hopefully you'll be hearing from me soon. Make sure you don't miss out. WeKnowGlobalSurvivor.com. If you missed my recap of the final week, if you missed the podcast I did with Shannon, lots of good stuff waiting in the wings to come as we keep going through this delicious Australian Survivor redemption post-season. But that's going to do it for this podcast. Keeley, seriously, thank you from the bottom of my heart. Such a joy getting to talk with you.
Thanks, Mike. It's good talking to you too.
All right. Until next time, everybody, thank you again so much for checking this out. Take care. Bye-bye.
This is RHAP. We know reality TV.